Chapter 167, Pursuing the Matter. Which clan are you all from? How dare you be so bold to actually command Grandmaster Yuan Shu to concoct alchemical pills for you? I really want to know if you all are from the imperial family or the 8 great clans. They were from the Wu clan, one of the 8 great clans. Because the 8 great clans and the imperial family were all very familiar with one another, they naturally knew that none of these people came from one of these 9 powerful parties, and since they were not, what other party would be more powerful than the Wu clan in the whole of Rain Country? In their minds, these people must have come from some backwater place and gone through some unknown relations to be able to enter into a side courtyard of Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Thus, they thought themselves superior to all others that they would even dare to be so insolent in front of Grandmaster Yuan Shu. Eldest aunt was shivering so much she kept stuttering. Her eyes were filled with a strong fear as she had already recognized the clan insignia that these 3 men were wearing, the Wu clan. One of the 8 great clans. Though she had married into a good clan, it was only a middle-class clan. Moreover, her husband was only a minor character with little actual power in the clan. If he knew that she actually offended the Wu clan, it was practically guaranteed that he would cut off her head at the earliest opportunity and head to the Wu clan to beg for forgiveness. The 8 great clans had the authority to decide one's life and death, and were only beneath the imperial family in terms of power. What? Say it quickly, who gave you the audacity to actually dare shout commands at Grandmaster Yuan Shu? The 3 men of the Wu clan pressed menacingly, smiling coldly at them. Jiang Fei Yan's father almost fainted in shock and terror. He had only heard his 2 elder sisters downplay the real situation, about how their request for Grandmaster Yuan Shu to concoct alchemical pills for them had been refused. He had never imagined that his 2 stupid sisters would actually dare act so insolently to Grandmaster Yuan Shu. He was completely pale by this point. If a black-grade middle-level alchemist were to be angered, and the Wu clan of the 8 great clans stepped out to punish the offender, the Jiang clan was definitely going to be finished and no one would dare to speak a single word in their defense. Wouldn't that be the case? Who asked them to offend an alchemist in the first place? Alchemists were an outstanding group of their own. They were a group of people others wanted nothing more than favor and goodwill of, and what do? You actually dare to behave so rudely to an alchemist. Who else were they going to kill if not you? Old 6, old 8, go and slap them. The mouths of these 2 B*** are really too smelly. Just now, because Grandmaster Yuan Shu was there, we did not have enough fun slapping them. Go and continue slapping them, a green-robed middle-aged man said. All right. The other 2 walked forwards to grab eldest aunt and youngest aunt. Both of them were in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, and had outstandingly strong ability. Though eldest aunt and youngest aunt wanted to flee, how could things go their way? They were instantly caught. Pa. The 2 shrews with bad mouths were continuously slapped, and very quickly, their faces were completely swollen. They even spat out a few pieces of broken teeth, and this was still because the 2 men had pulled their punches. Otherwise, if they had really used their full strength, what could 2 mere weaklings in body refining tier do? Zhang Hualian and Tong Yuan did not even dare to say one word. They could only curl around one another and hide in a corner. I am a daughter-in-law of Duanmu clan. Don't kill me. Eldest aunt sobbed. Her face that used to be quite smooth and rounded was now completely covered with blood and tears, making for an indescribably ugly picture. Duanmu clan, the green-robed man humphed. When has the Duanmu clan become so awesome? I'd really like to get an explanation from Duanmu Xiang. Duanmu Xiang was the current clan head of the Duanmu clan, but from the tone that this green-robed man was using, he obviously did not think that he was anyone important, causing eldest aunt to be filled with hopelessness. The emergency situation caused her brain to work faster, and she hurriedly called out, Wuji. Wuji. Save me. That's right, Wuji. Since you can manage to reserve a side courtyard here, your status must not be beneath his. Announce your status to scare him to death. Youngest aunt suddenly called out as well, as if she had just woken up from a dream. The green-robed man laughed coldly. Someone actually wanted to use his status to scare him to death. Then he really wanted to know what person could be so awesome. Jin Wuji only felt a layer of cold sweat covering his body. He was only the third young master of the Jin clan of De Yuan City. In De Yuan City, this identity was indeed enough to scare a lot of people to death, but when in the imperial city, Pei, it was nothing. What Wuji are you? The green-robed man smiled coldly. I am standing right here. Tell me your name, and see if you can scare me to death. This sir must be joking. This is all just a misunderstanding. Jin Wuji said, raising his clasped hands politely in greeting. These two seniors have drunk too much, and that's why they had so boldly went off to look for Grandmaster Yuan Chu. I would very much like to ask for forgiveness from all of you as well as Grandmaster Yuan Chu. Do you know what this shrew actually called Grandmaster Yuan Chu? There was a sliver of a mocking smile about the corners of the green-robed man's lips. Old dog. Did you hear that? They actually dared to call Grandmaster Yuan Chu old dog. I have lived for so many years and this is the first time I've seen someone actually dared to insult Grandmaster Yuan Chu as old dog. Jin Wuji and the other three members of the Jiang clan all turned pale. They had almost leaped forwards to strangle these two shrews to death. If they wanted to die, then they should just die on their own. Why had they come back to drag others down with them? Eldest aunt and youngest aunt were both filled with absolute regret. Part of the reason they dared to behave so arrogantly was because they had suddenly been able to sit within a side courtyard of Cherishing Flower Pavilion, making them feel as if their social status had shot up all of a sudden. But the more important reason was because they were indeed drunk. Otherwise, no matter how idiotic they were, they would not have dared to so rashly request for alchemical pills from Grandmaster Yuan Chu, what more insult him as old dog after being refused. But now, it was all too late. Nothing more to say, right? The green-robed man crossed his hands behind his back, his eyes sweeping over the surroundings, and gave a humph, as he said, "You country bumpkins are indeed arrogant. I've already been here for such a long time, and there is actually someone who still dares to remain seated." He had finally spotted Ling Han. Ling Han did not even spare him a look. He only focused all his energy on fighting with Hu Niu over the food. He was naturally just playing with the little girl, because even if he had managed to successfully grab any food, he would not eat it. He was already full. How insolent. Seeing your father here, you still dare to remain seated? The green-robed man glared, and a domineering pressure emanated from him. Ling Han's eyes turned cold, and gave a wave of his hand. The bone in his hand immediately flew towards the green-robed man. The green-robed man stretched out a hand to grab the bone, but just when his hand was about to come into contact with it, the piece of bone actually miraculously turned in a different direction, past his hand, and with a paw, hit his face. Firstly, he had underestimated his opponent, and secondly, Ling Han had tossed it in a strange way, which was what allowed for such a thing to happen. "You are seeking death," the green-robed man roared furiously. He leaped forwards towards Ling Han and brandished his fist, preparing to give Ling Han a thrashing. Ling Han's feet pressed down on the ground, and he had shot backwards. Using the exiting cloud steps was something that he could do easily. A weakling of mere element gathering tier actually could act so calmly when under the assault of a gushing spring tier elite? The green-robed man did not manage to hit his target, but when he still did not manage to take Ling Han down after a few moves, a serious expression came over his face. He stopped his attack, and said, "Brat, who are you? Slap yourself 10 times first. Then I'll talk to you," Ling Han said calmly. This man actually dared to call himself Ling Han's father right in front of him. How could he let him off without a thrashing? What arrogance! The green-robed man humphed coldly, and once again began attacking Ling Han. Hunyo quickly scrambled down from the chair and shot towards the green-robed man at an extremely fast speed. The green-robed man had not taken Hunyo into account at first. But when the little girl moved, he experienced a sudden shock that this little girl who was only 5 to 6 years old was actually in element-gathering tier. Who would dare believe it? But due to his extreme fury, he decided to do something very underhanded. Since he could do nothing to Ling Han, then he'd just hurt this little girl instead. A cold smile appeared on his face, and he suddenly delivered a punch that made its way ruthlessly towards Hunyo. You dare! Ling Han roared in anger. This man would actually cause such heavy injury to such a little girl. He was practically inhumane. He quickly leaped forwards, intending to block this punch for Hunyo. Chapter 168, Hunyo's Sneaky Kick. Ling Han was too far to be able to help Hunyo, and right when he saw the fist of this green-robed man was just about to hit Hunyo's body, the little girl suddenly twisted away in a strange manner and dodged the incoming attack. In an instant, she appeared behind the green-robed man, formed her hands into claws and shwa, delivered her own attack. Pang, pang, pang. An intensive round of attacks was heard, and the green-robed man once again paid the price for his carelessness. His back suffered a number of continuous attacks, and the clothing on his body was torn into pieces that flew around him like butterflies, followed by drops of blood spraying everywhere. Who would have thought that a little girl only 5 to 6 years old would have such formidable ability? However, there was ultimately a very big power gap between element gathering and gushing spring tier. Though the green-robed man looked to be in a terrible situation, he had already used origin power to protect his body. Thus, he did not suffer a serious injury. All his bones and internal organs were unharmed. Even so, he let out an ashamed and furious roar. He was a powerful elite warrior of the second layer of gushing spring tier, and he was actually so horribly wounded by a little girl. Die! He shot a punch towards Hunyo, who was still on his back. Hunyo immediately moved, and twisted around to place herself on the green-robed man's chest. Pang! He did not manage to stop his punch in time and actually punched his own back. The extreme pain caused his face to turn green, and tears uncontrollably rolled down his cheeks from the agony. Ling Han's cultivation level may have dropped, but his eyes were still very sharp. One look, and he did not worry anymore. Hunyo was going to be absolutely okay. Get away from me. The green-robed man once again shot out his fist, this time towards his chest. But it was as if Hunyo was a monkey. She quickly and nimbly moved, and was now hanging onto his thigh. This time, the green-robed man finally learnt his lesson. He managed to stop his own attack in time. Unfortunately, Hunyo delivered a sneaky kick right to his vulnerable B**********. So what if he was in gushing spring tier? There was still a lot of weaknesses on a person's body, such as the eyes, dantian, and for men, their D*********. This kick was very solid and powerful. Immediately, the green-robed man used his hands to cover the place between his legs. He was swaying on his feet, and his whole face was red as he ground his teeth loudly. It was very clear to see that the veins on his neck were throbbing, but he could not even force out a single word in his agony. All the men in the area could not help but cross their legs tightly together as they felt a coldness in their hearts that gave rise to a layer of cold sweat. Hunyo jumped off, and clung onto Ling Han. She turned around and made a face at the green-robed man, as if she was merely an innocent, mischievous little girl. The green-robed man fell into a half-kneeling position on the ground. His whole body was spasming. It was obvious that this kick had injured him very severely. Who would have thought that a powerful elite of gushing spring tear would be defeated by a little girl in such a humiliating way? That's right. Such a move would incur disdain if it were anyone else, but if it were Hunyo, it was only to be expected. A big, strong man like you actually lowered yourself to bully a little girl. Even if your B**** were crushed, you would have deserved it. Moreover, you are in gushing spring tear, and your opponent is only a little kid 5 to 6 years old. This was a matter of unbearable shame and humiliation. Good job. Ling Han gave Hunyo a thumbs up. If anyone else dares to bully you in future, just kick them so hard you crush their B**********. If you get into trouble, don't worry. I'll be there to defend you. Nyo understands. Hunyo gave a wide, sweet smile. Right. How could he teach a child like that? Wasn't he worried that he would be a bad influence on her, and that she would become a female hooligan when she grew up? You're in big trouble. We are members of the Wu clan. The Wu clan. Have you heard of us? We're one of the 8 great clans. The other 2 members of the Wu clan tried to put up a strong appearance, though they were very afraid right now. The 2 of them were barely in element gathering tier 1. Don't think that just because they were the clansmen of a great clan, they were automatically powerful elites. Every clan had members that were more talented and those that were less talented. Then you too should also stay behind as well. Ling Han made a move, and charged to attack the other 2. At the 4th layer of element gathering tier, he was already strong enough to oppose a powerful elite in the 9th layer of element gathering tier like Qi Yongyi. Now that his cultivation level had soared up to the 7th layer, what could these 2 pieces of trash do against him? With one move, he had subdued the 2. Hunyo moved and gave the 2 men a violent thrashing. The members of the Jiang clan were all watching with a layer of cold sweat covering them. Those were clansmen of the Wu clan, and they were actually beaten up like they were dead dogs. Everything was over. Everyone here would be dying. Even eldest aunt and youngest aunt could no longer care about continuing to wail about their pains. They hurriedly rushed over, trying to stop Ling Han and Hunyo, these 2 maniacs. Ling Han would naturally not entangle himself with 2 shrews. He took several steps back. Anyways, he had already had his fun thrashing these 3 men. You're all dead. The green-robed man finally got his breath back, his face filled with shame and rage. He was in gushing spring tear, and should have been able to easily take all the people here down. Yet, in the end, he was actually so easily defeated at the hands of a little girl. He would never be able to wash away such a shameful thing from his name. If you don't speak, no one will think you are mute. Ling Han delivered a kick, and half the teeth in the green-robed man's mouth was spat out. The pain caused him to cry out. His injuries had become even heavier this time. The members of the Jiang clan were all looking at Ling Han as if he was crazy. In their eyes, Ling Han could not possibly have a background that could surpass the 8 great clans in terms of power. But he actually dared to thrash the members of the Wu clan so harshly. Wasn't that like an old man committing suicide? Tired of living? Even Jin Wuji was completely cold. He was well aware that Ling Han had come from the Yuan city, just like he had. At most, he was only familiar with a few black-grade low-level alchemists. They had gotten into trouble. This was really big trouble. We don't know you. Eldest aunt and youngest aunt said in trembling voices. Then they turned to Jiang Fei Yan's father and said, Jiang Bo Xian, we're also cutting all ties with you. From now onwards, there is no more relation between us. You were the ones who caused this trouble. Don't implicate us in this. Jiang Fei Yan, her parents, and Jin Wuji were all furious at their words. These 2 pairs of mother and son were the ones who had so rashly rushed out to find Grandmaster Yuan Shu, and had even dared to insult him as old dog. And now they had nothing to do with the issue? How could there be such shameless people? None of you would be able to escape, the green-robed man said maliciously. His whole lower half was completely numb and he could not feel anything at all, so he had no idea if he was still a man. If he was really disabled as a man, then he would kill everyone here 3 times to vent his hatred. You still dare to open your mouth? Ling Han was very surprised and raised his foot once more. No. The green-robed man was terrified. This young man was practically a maniac. He obviously knew that he was from the Wu clan, and he still dared to attack him. Moreover, every move he made was extremely ruthless, so he was really terrified. Who asked him to be too heavily injured now that he could not even display an ounce of his real strength? But he swore that he would definitely break Ling Han's bones and throw his ashes to the winds. You're not behaving inside your heart. Ling Han said calmly. Hu Niu immediately bared her teeth and growled, displaying her ferocious nature. The green-robed man felt his heart tighten. Compared to Ling Han, he was actually more fearful of Hu Niu. This little girl was practically like a demonic beast in human form. You could still reason with humans, still threaten humans or bribe them, but what about demonic beasts? Mere words were completely useless. Just give up. Even if I beat you half to death, the seniors of your clan would only say that I did a good thing. Ling Han said calmly. Nonsense, the green-robed man immediately said disdainfully in his heart. Even the members of the Jiang clan were shaking their heads at this. That was absolutely impossible. The only way that could be possible was if Ling Han was actually the illegitimate son of the Rain Emperor. If he were, then he indeed could possibly make the Wu clan lower their heads in front of him. Zifeng, have you not settled the issue yet? It was at this moment that the voice of an old man was heard from outside. Chapter 169, Grandmaster Yuan Chu who curries favor. Elder Qian Feng, the green-robed man and his 2 companions called out in unison, their voices filled with grief and indignation. How could they not? Usually, only they were able to bully others. Yet now, they were actually thrashed so completely by someone and stepped on today. This was practically enough to drive them insane. Outside the door, there stood 2 men. One was an elderly man who looked to be in his 60s. He was dressed in a red robe, his hair completely black and his face very smooth and unblemished. He did not look old at all. The other man was about the same age, and there were 2 silver-colored badges that hung on his chest. Anyone with a bit of general knowledge would know that this meant that the man was a black-grade middle-level alchemist. Obviously, one of the men was an elder of the Wu clan, Wu Qianfeng, while the other was Grandmaster Yuan Chu Yuan. Greetings, Grandmaster Yuan Chu. Greetings, Master Wu. The members of the Jiang clan and the others all stepped forwards to pay their respects. For them, these 2 were really very important people. Usually, it would be very difficult for them to see 2 men of such high status, but now, all of a sudden, they had met with 2 such important men. The overwhelming shock was more than enough to make their legs shiver. When Yuan Chu saw eldest aunt and youngest aunt, he could not help but give a humph. An expression of extreme displeasure appeared on his face. These 2 shrews actually dared to insult him as old dog. For a proud alchemist, that was really an extraordinary shame and humiliation. I am not deserving of such respectful greetings from you, he said coldly. Actually, with his status, he would not deign to lower himself to the levels of 2 shrews like them, yet there was too much anger in his heart. If he could not even speak 1 or 2 words in mockery, there was no way he could vent this anger. From this aspect, eldest aunt and youngest aunt were really quite powerful, as they had actually managed to cause a black-grade middle-level alchemist to lose his composure. This was a feat that not many could boast of accomplishing. Grandmaster Yuan Chu, we have been blind. Please forgive us and spare us for our insolence. Eldest aunt and youngest aunt both knelt on the floor. They continued to slap themselves as they sobbed endlessly. Yet Yuan Shu was not moved at all. He said, "Didn't you say that there was someone here that could subdue me? I have come here now, so call him out." Jiang Fei Yan's father and the others were all dumbstruck as they realized how eldest aunt and youngest aunt managed to escape. They really were despicable. Just so they could live for a little while longer, they had implicated the rest of them in the trouble they had caused. Meanwhile, Wu Qianfeng had spotted the green-robed man. His face was completely ashen as he asked, "What is going on here? You all couldn't even capture the few people here?" Members of the Wu clan were actually so harshly thrashed by another, so much that even their teeth had been punched out. This was absolutely an act of challenging the authority of the Wu clan. The green-robed man and his two companions all lowered their heads in shame. How could they tell their clan's elder that they had been defeated by a little girl? "Which master is here? Since you have made a move to punish my few unworthy juniors, why do you not show yourself to me?" Wu Qianfeng swept his eyes over everyone here. The most powerful among them was only in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so there was no one here that could possibly defeat Wu Zifeng. "It's him." The green-robed man pointed at Ling Han. "Him?" Wu Qianfeng looked flabbergasted. This was only a junior merely in the 7th layer of element gathering tier. Had Wu Zifeng lost his mind? "It's him," the green-robed man said through gritted teeth, veins on his forehead popping out in his fury. "He used underhanded tricks to defeat me. I would like to ask Elder Qianfeng to act and punish him harshly on our behalf." When they heard his words, the members of the Jiang clan and the others all bore expressions of disdain. "You actually lost to a little girl, and you still dare to say that it was because your opponent had used underhanded tricks. Oh." Wu Qianfeng placed his hands behind his back, and as his eyes fell on Ling Han, killing intent exuded from him. Whether or not Ling Han had used any kind of underhanded tricks, since he had dared to make a move against members of the Wu clan, that was more than enough to sentence him to death. "Brat, do you want to commit suicide, or wait for me to make the move?" he asked calmly. Sensing the killing intent emanating from the old man, Hunyo immediately pounced onto the ground. She raised her head slightly and bared her teeth, an alert expression coming over her face. Hunyo." Yuanchu's attention had been completely captured by eldest aunt and youngest aunt. In another way, these two shrews were indeed quite capable to be able to so thoroughly capture the attention of a grandmaster alchemist, so much that he had not noticed the others. It was only now that he had suddenly discovered that Hunyo was there. If Hunyo was here, then could it be? He hurriedly swept his eyes over his surroundings. When he spotted Ling Han, a bright smile suddenly appeared on his face. In an instant, he had raced over to Ling Han and bent down into a low bow as he said, "I did not know that young Master Han was here. Please forgive this Yuan Chu for not coming out to greet you." Pooh! When they saw this scene, everyone else immediately choked. Hey, you are a black-grade middle-level alchemist, someone with extremely noble status. How could you put on such a bootlicking display?" His smile was so bright that it was practically dazzling. Damn, he was toadying so much, it was so absolutely shameless of him. Eldest aunt and youngest aunt both gaped, their tongues out. Even their eyes looked to be in danger of popping out. Wasn't that the country bumpkin? Hadn't he come to join in their dinner on Jin Wuji's invitation? Why was it that even a noble alchemist like Grandmaster Yuan Chu had to address him so respectfully as young Master Han? What was going on here? Wu Qianfeng was also shocked. He was very well aware what the identity of a black-grade middle-level alchemist implied, but even a person of such noble stature was behaving so reverently in front of Ling Han. This was practically unbelievable. Even if the head of the Wu clan himself was here, there was absolutely no way that Yuan Chu would behave so submissively. Alchemists were a group of very proud people. If you wanted them to lower their heads to you, the only way to accomplish that would be to surpass them in terms of alchemy. But the problem here was, how old was Ling Han exactly? How could anyone believe that he was above Yuan Shu in terms of alchemy skill? In that instant, the surroundings turned completely quiet. No one spoke a single word. Really, what kind of people are you getting yourself involved with? Ling Han frowned, looking very displeased. Wu Qianfeng wanted to fly into a rage at that moment. This was practically insulting them in a roundabout manner. If Ling Han was the grand elder of one of the great clans, he would not react. But a mere wet-behind-the-ears brat like Ling Han actually dared to mock him right in front of his face. How could he endure such humiliation? Yes, yes, yes. It is all Yuanchu's fault for not seeing clearly enough. Please forgive my error, young Master Han. Who would have thought that Yuan Shu would actually incessantly admit the error of his ways, his demeanor more and more humble, as if he was Ling Han's alchemy apprentice. Wu Qianfeng forcibly swallowed the words that were right on the tip of his tongue. Was Yuan Shu an idiot? Of course not. Did Yuan Shu have a high status? Of course. But even Yuan Shu had to behave so cautiously and reverently, so how terrifying would Ling Han's real identity be? Wu Qianfeng was not a rash man. He immediately reconsidered the situation here. Forget it. Ling Han waved his hand, and beamed brightly at Wu Qianfeng as he said, I was the one who thrashed the members of your Wu clan, so what do you want to do now? What to do? Naturally to kill him in public as a warning to others. These were Wu Qianfeng's initial thoughts. But how could he dare to have such intentions now? Because Yuan Shu was already looking at him in a very unfriendly manner. Obviously, if he dared to say one word about the matter, Yuan Shu would really become hostile immediately. He gave an internal sigh, and knew that he had lost the battle before it had even started. There was nothing he could do. Who asked him to have a request to make of Yuan Shu? Moreover, even if he had nothing to ask of Yuan Shu, his clan would definitely not dare to offend a black-grade middle-level alchemist either. Hee, young Master Han must be joking. These few guys must have offended young Master Han. Even if young Master Han did not make a move, would have taught them a lesson too, Wu Qianfeng laughed. He looked very natural and his demeanor didn't betray the slightest sign of his previous thoughts. What an old fox. Chapter 170, Unless you want Grandmaster Fu to act? The members of the Jiang clan felt like they were about to pass out from the absolute shock. First, it was Grandmaster Yuan Shu who put on a boot-licking display in front of Ling Han, and now, Wu Qianfeng looked completely supportive of Ling Han's actions. They really felt that their worldview had completely been shattered to pieces. But they were not idiots. For example, eldest aunt and youngest aunt had already been shocked sober from their drunken state. Now, their whole bodies were shivering as they recalled how they showed much disdain and disrespect to Ling Han. Who knows if he would be calling them to account for it. They were also filled with overwhelming regret. If they had known that Ling Han was actually such an awesome character, wouldn't it have been great if they had flattered him endlessly just now? Looking at the boot-licking display that Grandmaster Yuan Shu was showing now, he would agree even if he was commanded to address them as father, what more concocting a mere few furnaces worth of alchemical pills. Who had asked them to act so snobbishly earlier? Meanwhile, Yuan Shu asked angrily, young Master Han, what did they do? Oh, this guy called himself my father. Ling Han pointed at the green-robed man. Pooh, Wu Qianfeng almost leaped up in indignation. Martial artists were typically rough and coarse in their ways. It was very common for them to say things like, grandson, or, your father. You actually gave them such a severe thrashing just because of something like that? Wasn't that a bit of an overreaction? Yet Yuan Shu's expression changed drastically, as he said, how dare you actually call yourself young Master Han's father? You deserve to die. Who was Ling Han? He was a real Grandmaster alchemist, and very soon, he would be able to possess the badge of a black-grade high-level alchemist. Moreover, those who had observed Ling Han's alchemy skills yesterday would know that Ling Han was able to concoct alchemical pills close to earth grade. That meant that Ling Han actually already had 1 foot in the ranks of earth grade alchemists. He was such a high-ranking, noble person. Who would be able to call himself Ling Han's father? Oh, if you've become the father of an earth grade alchemist, then wouldn't that mean black grade alchemists like them would have become your grandsons, great-grandsons, or great-great-grandsons? Yuan Shu and the other alchemists had already long been subdued by Ling Han's impressive alchemy skills, and took him to be half their master. How could a disciple not be furious when their master was being insulted? He focused his gaze on the green-robed man and his 2 companions, and asked coldly, "How do you want to die?" Damn! Just calling yourself someone's father and it was a death sentence? Then how many people would need to die every day in Rain Country? The faces of the green-robed man and his 2 companions were completely dark. They were the real victims here, and they were so harshly thrashed that they had lost all their teeth. And now, they were actually being asked how they wanted to die. They really felt extremely wronged. This time, even Wu Qianfeng could no longer overlook the matter, and asked, "Grandmaster Yuan Shu, isn't this going a bit too far?" "Too far?" Yuan Shu smiled coldly, "Then let us go and see Grandmaster Fu Yuansheng, and see what Grandmaster Fu would say. However, I can guarantee that if Grandmaster Fu personally makes a move, then that would require a personal apology from the clan head of the Wu clan." When he had finished saying these words, a dead silence had fallen over the entire side courtyard. For the clan head of the Wu clan to make a personal apology, what kind of unbelievable concept was that? Even if this brat was Fu Yuansheng's own son, he would not dote on him to this extent. It was practically as if Fu Yuansheng was worshipping him like a son worshipped his father. Wu Qianfeng wiped off the layer of cold sweat on his forehead, and said, "Grandmaster Yuan Shu, are you joking with me?" No matter how he looked at it, such a brat like Ling Han could not possibly be so capable. "You can gamble," Yuan Shu said coldly. Wu Qianfeng could not help but hesitate. If Yuan Shu was not exaggerating, then if matters advanced to the point that Fu Yuansheng would make a move, that would really be a very horrible thing. The question here was, could Yuan Shu's words be believed? It was not likely that a black-grade alchemist would lie, but the words he had said were really too overwhelming. Wu Qianfeng really found it a very difficult thing to believe. He could not help but be stuck in a dilemma. Forget it. Just have them apologize, and this matter is over. Ling Han gave a wave of his hand in dismissal. Young Master Han is indeed magnanimous. Yuan Shu quickly flattered. This was being magnanimous? He thrashed them and still wanted them to apologize. How could someone be as overbearing as that? Wu Qianfeng finally sighed. He decided to admit his loss as he had a request to make of Yuan Shu. That was the reason why he had invited Yuan Shu to dinner here in the first place, but he had never thought that things would turn out this way. Actually, he was really innocent in all of this. It had been those 2 shrews who had made trouble in the first place, and that was why he had told his clansmen to stand up for Yuan Shu. He never thought that he would crash into a hard wall like Ling Han. "Zifeng, apologize to young Master Han," he said to the green-robed man, forcing down the flames of rage burning in his heart. The green-robed man felt an indescribable fury fill his whole body. His hands were tightly curled into fists. He really wanted to give Ling Han a thrashing of his own, but when he saw the threatening look Wu Qianfeng was directing at him, he could not help but lower his head, and forced out through gritted teeth, "I was wrong. Please forgive me, young Master Han." Ling Han smiled faintly and calmly accepted the apology. He did not have much of a good impression of the Wu clan. There was a Wu Bo among their ranks that he was definitely going to kill off one day. "Grandmaster Yuan Shu, about that clashing yang pill, Wu Qianfeng said to Yuan Chu submissively. Hung, after such a thing has happened, you still want me to help you concoct the clashing yang pill? Yuan Chu glared, refusing without any slight bit of hesitation. There was a layer of cold sweat on Wu Qianfeng's forehead as he said, Grandmaster Yuan Chu, you can't go back on your word. I don't want to concoct alchemical pills for your Wu clan. So what? Yuan Chu said shamelessly. You. Wu Qianfeng pointed a trembling finger at Yuan Chu, but could not say anything else. Yuan Chu was in spiritual ocean tier like him, and merely due to his status as a black-grade middle-level alchemist, he dared not say any threatening words. Ling Han's eyes swept over him, and could not help but feel a slight shock. He asked, Old Wu, why do you need to concoct the clashing yang pill? Old Wu? Wu Qianfeng almost rushed over to slap him. He was an elite warrior in spiritual ocean tier and was more than old enough to become Ling Han's grandfather. Yet Ling Han actually addressed him as Old Wu. How could he tolerate such humiliation? However, in Ling Han's eyes, for a martial artist of merely spiritual ocean tier and an old man in his 60s, he had given him enough face by not calling him Little Wu. Young Master Han, one of his legs is suspected to have been bitten by an extremely poisonous snake. Thus, he needs the clashing yang pill to heal his poison, Yuan Chu immediately explained. Ling Han looked over and saw that Wu Qianfeng's left leg was obviously much thicker than his right leg. He was very curious, and said, Pull up your pant leg and show me. Wu Qianfeng immediately looked displeased. Are you commanding me? Meanwhile, Yuan Chu said calmly, Young Master Han's alchemy skills is above even mine. It would be extremely tough for me to concoct this clashing yang pill, but for young Master Han, it would be a piece of cake. Young Master Han, please take a look. Wu Qianfeng did not say another word and immediately pulled up his pant leg. The speed at which he changed his attitude was enough to make everyone dumbstruck. They also felt like they were going to faint. So an elite of spiritual ocean tier and a member of one of the 8 great clans could act so shamelessly too. A very strange smell wafted out. It smelt a bit like iron, and upon a closer look, Wu Qianfeng's left leg was not only very swollen, it was also as black as ink. From the looks of it, it definitely looked like he had been poisoned by some strange venom. Ling Han pressed lightly with a finger on Wu Qianfeng's thigh, and asked, Do you still remember how you were bitten? I was exploring an ancient tomb when I found something black. Just when I was about to pick it up to take a closer look, it suddenly shot forwards and bit my leg. After that, it completely vanished, Wu Qianfeng answered. Ling Han smiled, and said, I can help you solve your problem. Really? Wu Qianfeng was instantly excited. Since young Master Han has said so, how could it be that he would lie to you? Yuan Chu immediately humphed in displeasure. Hee, I was just excited. Please bear with me, young Master Han. Wu Qianfeng said with a smile full of flattery. There was not a single hint of his earlier pride in his current demeanor. Chapter 171, Treatment. Ling Han did not take it to heart. There was a flash of delight in his eyes that no one else noticed. It was not a snake that had bitten Wu Qianfeng, but a treasure. Of course, he could not confirm it yet. However, he was quite sure that it was the case. Come, change your position and lay your leg down flat, Ling Han instructed. Wu Qianfeng quickly sat down and laid his leg down on another chair. He then looked at Ling Han anxiously. There was no way that a great alchemist like Yuan Chu would make empty boasts. Thus, when he said that Ling Han's alchemy skills were even above his, then that had to be the truth even if that was a very astonishing fact that he really couldn't believe. Everyone else now had become minor characters as they all directed their stares at Ling Han, an unbelievably young man with unbelievable skills. Ling Han did not feel uncomfortable at all. In his last life, he was already long used to becoming the focus of everyone's attention. What he wanted now was to confirm the idea he had in his mind. He stretched out a hand and tapped repeatedly on Wu Qianfeng's leg. After every few taps, he would stop and observe for a moment. After a moment, a confident smile came over his face as he said, "Old Wu, I'm going to start the treatment now. However, it will be very painful. Please don't worry, young Master Han. I am a practitioner of martial arts, so what hardships have I not experienced before? Please do as you like, young Master Han. I can, Wu Qianfeng was just getting impassioned talking about his pain tolerance when all of a sudden, he let out an agonized yell. A powerful crimson flame suddenly appeared on Ling Han's palm that transformed into a sharp point that was currently burning Wu Qianfeng's skin. Yuan Chu was watching from the side, and sighed ruefully, "Young Master Han is indeed extremely fortunate to be able to fuse with a strange fire. I am about to die from envy." In front of Ling Han, there was naturally no need for him to act all high and mighty. Strange fire. When the others heard this, the majority of them were confused. Only Wu Qianfeng looked astonished. He naturally knew what strange fire was. This thing was extremely rare, and by itself, it possessed great power. But to actually refine it? Sorry, even the current Reign Emperor may not be able to accomplish such an extraordinary feat. Perhaps only that mysterious old monster from the Qi clan would be able to subdue a strange fire. Ling Han was only an element-gathering tier. How had he managed such a feat? Wu Qianfeng definitely did not believe that Ling Han had managed to fuse with a strange fire all on his own ability. Then it was very simple. It must have been the master behind Ling Han or his clan that had helped him to fuse with a strange fire. A party that could retrieve a strange fire and allow one of their juniors to fuse with it. How abominably generous was that? As his thoughts turned in this direction, Wu Qianfeng could not help but feel gratitude towards Yuan Chu. The matter just now had become too serious. Putting aside the problem of his treatment, merely Ling Han's terrifying background was not something that the Wu clan would be able to stand against. His thoughts flashed through his mind, and he once again released a horrible scream. Just now, he had been distracted and had managed to momentarily forget the agonizing pain. But now, the pain made a comeback, driving him practically crazy enough that he wanted to beat someone up. Hiss! The people surrounding them all revealed expressions of utter shock, because they actually saw one vein after another all reveal themselves on Wu Qianfeng's leg. Upon a closer look, these veins were actually continuously twisting around as if they were a group of very slender snakes. Ling Han gave a humph. His fingers continuously touched, pressed and pushed. With the burning of the flames, these slender snakes kept retreating and finally converged around the ankle. Wu Qianfeng's thigh was visibly regaining the color of normal skin at a detectable speed. As the black color continuously moved downwards, it became darker and darker, as if it was about to turn solid and gush out of his leg. It was really very strange. However, Wu Qianfeng looked elated at this. Even if he was an idiot, he could tell that Ling Han did have his ways, and was slowly forcing the poison in his body to accumulate in his foot. But it was really painful. Very painful. Extremely painful. As a spiritual ocean tier elite, Wu Qianfeng still had a very high pain tolerance. By now, he could already force himself not to let out any moans of pain. However, layer after layer of cold sweat appeared on his skin, and both his legs were endlessly quivering. By this point, all the black color had converged into the sole of his foot. Ling Han drew his sword, and said, "Old Wu, I have now forced all the poison into your left foot. Everything would be all right after I amputate your foot. Is that fine? Fine, your sister. This is one of my feet we're talking about here." Wu Qianfeng mocked internally. However, he had visited many doctors previously, and they had all advised him to amputate his whole left leg to be able to preserve his life. In comparison, merely cutting off his left foot was already a much better bargain. After all, his life was important, and it would only become more and more troublesome if he continued to drag it out. Young Master Han, please do it," Wu Qianfeng said, gritting his teeth. Ling Han drew his sword, and shua, a cold flash passed. Immediately, black-colored blood sprayed out. He did not cut off Wu Qianfeng's foot, but merely made an incision in the sole of his foot to let out blood. With the continuous urging of the strange fire, black blood gushed out endlessly. "Here it comes." Ling Han's eyes suddenly lit up. He quickly dropped his sword and stretched out a hand towards the fountain of black blood. Then, he immediately drew back his hand. No one noticed that there was an additional something in his hand, because he had immediately stored the item into the spatial ring. The black blood was continuously forced out, and very quickly, Wu Qianfeng's left leg had completely returned to normal. However, it still looked a bit pale. After all, Wu Qianfeng had lost a lot of blood. "It's done," Ling Han said. Wu Qianfeng sensed for a moment, and an expression of uncontrollable elation appeared on his face. He hurriedly stood and raised his clasped hands in Ling Han's direction and said, "Many thanks, young Master Han. Many thanks, young Master Han." This venom had troubled him for many years. There was no hint of recovery even after he had taken many different types of medicine that were supposed to heal poison. Every day, he had to use his origin power to suppress the poison. If not, the poison would make its way upwards and absorb his blood. If it was not because of this poison, he would not still be in the 7th layer of spiritual ocean tier now. Instead, he would have managed to reach the 9th layer, with a high chance to break through to spiritual pedestal tier. If the clashing yang pill still had no effects, he was indeed preparing to give up his left leg. After all, a living man who had lost a leg was still much better than a dead man who had all his limbs. He had never thought that Ling Han would so easily manage to solve a problem that had troubled him for almost 10 years. Amazing. Cover up that hairy leg of yours. Do you think it looks very nice? Ling Han said disdainfully. By now, Wu Qianfeng's leg was scorched black in some places, and those places that were not burnt were covered with body hair. It was indeed a disgusting sight. Yes. Yes. Wu Qianfeng was currently very elated, so he ignored Ling Han's extremely rude tone. "All right. You may go now." Ling Han flicked his hand, and issued the command for them to leave. "Yes." Wu Qianfeng quickly raised his clasped hands in farewell. As he continuously made his apologies to the members of the Jiang clan, he picked up the 3 juniors of his clan. Since the poison was now cured, he naturally did not need to beg Yuan Chu for any favors. Thus, he directly returned home. "You return too," Ling Han said to Yuan Chu. "Yes, young Master Han." At first, Yuan Chu was planning to flatter him a bit more, but when he recalled that Ling Han was currently staying in the Imperial City and would definitely come over to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion frequently, he did not continue to bother him and took his leave. Now that the outsiders were gone, the members of the Jiang clan all looked at Ling Han with reverence. Ling Han smiled, and asked, "What is it? Do you not know me anymore?" "I do indeed feel like I don't know you anymore," Jin Wuji said with a bitter smile. "Even Grandmaster Yuan Chu and Master Wu had to show you utmost respect. I am really at a loss what to do. How about if I call you young Master Han as well?" "Go to hell." Ling Han laughed loudly. "Do you not take me as a friend?" All of a sudden, Jin Wuji felt a warmth spread out in his heart. Chapter 172, Blood-Sucking Origin Gold. Becoming friends with Ling Han before and later, the significance of the 2 scenarios were completely different. Even a black-grade middle-level alchemist had to address Ling Han respectfully as young Master Han. What an honor it was to be able to become Ling Han's friend. Jiang Fei Yan's parents and Jiang Fei Yan herself were all extraordinarily delighted by his words. Meanwhile, eldest aunt and youngest aunt both shamelessly approached Ling Han. Eldest aunt said, "Young Master Han, my Hual Yen and Yuan are both good boys. They will definitely be able to become good friends with young Master Han." That's right, that's right. You can all become good friends," youngest aunt hurriedly continued. They were really without any sense of shame. Ling Han asked calmly, "Do I know you?" Eldest aunt and youngest aunt were instantly struck speechless by his question. If it was just a moment ago, they would definitely have bared their fangs and brandished their claws. Yet now, they dared not say even one word. Instead, they continued to signal at Jiang Fei Yan with their eyes, hoping that she could speak up on their behalf. If their sons could become good friends with Ling Han, then wouldn't that mean that they would be able to do as they liked in this imperial city? "You all can get lost now," Ling Han said impatiently. How could eldest aunt and youngest aunt give up as easily as that? They simply pretended that they had not heard him, and planned to continue pestering Ling Han. Ling Han smiled coldly, and said, "Or do you want me to invite Wu Qianfeng and Yuan Chu back to call an account to your old debts?" Sparing them once was already him giving face to Jin Wuji. If not, he would have given them both a well-deserved slap long ago. Hearing his threat, eldest aunt and youngest aunt could only reluctantly leave with their sons in tow. Ling Han retook his seat and continued to drink with Jin Wuji and the rest for a while before taking his leave. Firstly, the atmosphere was not too comfortable. His status had all of a sudden shot up to such formidable heights that it caused Jin Wuji and the others to behave very reservedly in his company. Secondly, he was also in a rush to return and study the item that he had gotten from Wu Qianfeng. With Hu Niu in tow, Ling Han very quickly returned to the academy. Faced with a challenging look from Lu Ru'er, he closed the door to his room. With a single thought from him, an item immediately appeared from within the spatial ring. It was a very black thing, thin and long. Once it appeared, it actually moved a little before quickly shooting towards Ling Han, as if it was an arrow shot from a bow. The thing was extremely fast, so fast that even Wu Qianfeng could not defend himself against it, causing him to stagnate at the current cultivation level for a period of 10 years. This more than showed how fast it could be. Even an elite warrior of the 7th layer of spiritual ocean tier was not spared, what more Ling Han who was merely in the 7th layer of element gathering tier. Xiao, the thing had already shot to Ling Han's waist, and was actually about to penetrate his body through his waist. Hung! Ling Han's face turned cold, and suddenly, a burst of crimson flame erupted from his waist. "How dare you? Since I had the ability to force you out, how could it be possible that I would be afraid of you?" The thing continued to shoot in various directions, still intending to create a hole on Ling Han's body to allow it to enter his body. However, its attempts were repeatedly blocked by the strange fire, and it was finally captured by Ling Han once again. Hong, the strange fire came forth and began burning the thing. The thing continued to twist around and struggle. It actually transformed from its initial long, thin shape to the shape of a block, then transformed into the form of a sword, then a saber, and so on. It was an amazing sight. So it is indeed blood-sucking origin gold. Ling Han smiled. The blood-sucking origin gold was not a demonic beast nor any kind of living organism. In fact, it was a unique kind of metal. However, this metal was extremely strange because it loved to suck and devour blood, as if it had a life of its own. Not even Ling Han possessed a detailed knowledge of this thing. But, someone had once guessed before that when this strange metal absorbed a sufficient amount of blood strong enough, it might be able to open the door to life and become a completely new life form. And the greatest advantage of this metal was that it could freely change its form. Once it was forged into a weapon, the weapon would be able to change into uncountable forms. In Ling Han's last life, the slashing sun saber, the weapon of one of the 7 ultimate warriors of Heaven Tier, the setting Sun Saber Emperor, was forged precisely from this blood-sucking origin gold. In battle, the treasured saber would be able to continuously absorb the blood of powerful warriors to endlessly increase its power. It was practically able to compare to the might of an ultimate warrior of Heaven Tier on its own. That was how terrifying it could be. However, this block of blood-sucking origin gold was much too small to forge it into a weapon. Still, there would be no problems in using it to make a key. Since it could freely change its shape, that meant that it would be able to become a key that could open any lock in this world. That wasn't awesome enough? In his last life, Ling Han had only seen the blood-sucking origin gold in the hands of the setting Sun Saber Emperor, but when he'd heard Wu Qianfeng's story, he deduced the identity of the snake. Otherwise, how could he have treated the ailment of a member of the Wu clan without any reason? Thankfully, he was not disappointed. Yaya. The strange fire sent a blurry thought to Ling Han. It actually wanted to continue melting this block of metal. Ling Han could somewhat sense that the strange fire felt disdain towards the blood-sucking origin gold. It was really strange. Once it was melted, would the strange fire be able to gain the transformation trait of the blood-sucking origin gold? But if he did not melt it down, the thing would not listen to him at all. Its bloodthirsty nature was overwhelming. It was appropriate to forge a weapon from it, but it was definitely not recommended to forge it into a key. Burn and melt it down, he'll just have to see if that would be able to erase its bloodthirsty nature. Ling Han made his decision and allowed the strange fire to continuously refine this block of blood-sucking origin gold. However, since the blood-sucking origin gold could gain the favor of the setting Sun Saber Emperor who used it to forge his own weapon, it did indeed have a very high tolerance against heat. It only became slightly red under the furious burning of the strange fire, but did not melt at all. If it was not for the fact that fire was strong against metal, Ling Han probably would not be able to do anything to it. Then he'd just have to slowly melt it down. He did not believe that he would be unable to subdue a block of metal. Ling Han sat down in a cross-legged position and stimulated the origin power in his body, transforming it into heat that helped in the refining process of the blood-sucking origin gold. Slowly, this block of unique metal began to become softer and softer, and gradually looked like it would be turning into liquid. That slashing Sun Saber of the setting Sun Saber Emperor was far above this level. That treasured saber was practically invincible against all external damage. Even the Sword Emperor who had learnt Sword Heart and claimed to be able to slice the heavens and the earth apart with a single wave of his sword could not break it in half. That proved how extraordinary a substance it was. The reason for this should be because the blood-sucking origin gold had the ability to grow. It would be able to become stronger through the continuous absorption of blood. Currently, this block of blood-sucking origin gold had not absorbed too much blood. As a result, it could not do anything against even a martial artist of the 7th layer of spiritual ocean tier. A whole 10 years, and it still had not managed to completely absorb the blood of its victim, which was proof enough of its weakness. Otherwise, if it was that slashing Sun Saber of the setting Sun Saber Emperor, then Ling Han would definitely have turned and fled in the opposite direction. How could he stand against that demonic thing with his current ability? The block of metal continued to change shapes, and had even transformed into the shape of a tiny human being that roared silently. This would cause anyone to suspect if it was actually a metal that had a life of its own. However, living organisms could not be stored into the spatial ring, so it was confirmed that the blood-sucking origin gold was an inanimate object. Anyways, it was just very strange. After melting it down for a whole day and night, the block of blood-sucking origin gold finally became a pool of liquid and no longer changed forms. Ling Han's face turned serious, and he began to extend his divine sense into the blood-sucking origin gold. To make the blood-sucking origin gold take a form of his choosing, he would have to use his divine sense to penetrate into it. It was equivalent to smelting and forging the blood-sucking origin gold like it was a spirit weapon. Ling Han's divine sense suddenly entered into a world of complete darkness. The furious sounds of battle roared in his ears. As the sight in front of him became lighter, he saw uncountable people all attacking a giant in front of him. The giant stood firm and sturdy, and there was a metallic sheen all over its body. It was extremely hard, because even with the combined attacks of a few thousand people, there only appeared slight depressions on its body, which immediately turned back to normal. It was as if the depressions were made by fingers lightly pressing down on its body. Ling Han was shocked. The body of this giant was completely made from the blood-sucking origin gold. Chapter 173, A State of Enlightenment. Even with the might the setting sun Saber Emperor had, he had only managed to obtain a block of blood-sucking origin gold that was about the size of a human head. Had forged it into his famous weapon, the slashing sun saber, on which he relied to become the third strongest existence among the 7 ultimate warriors of heaven tier. But there actually appeared a firm and sturdy giant here that was completely made from the blood-sucking origin gold. Wasn't that a terrifying fact? Ling Han had guessed before that once this blood-sucking origin gold had managed to absorb enough blood, it would be able to transform into a living being, but he had never imagined that there would appear such a terrifying giant. There were millions of martial artists ganging up on this giant of blood-sucking origin gold. Their combined attacks shot towards it like they were shooting stars and continuously blasted against the body of the giant. But, there were very few attacks that could actually break through its defenses. Even those few attacks that managed to get through its defenses only managed to leave behind light marks on its body. However, the counterattack of the giant of origin gold was really too horrifying. It only opened its mouth and would be able to swallow down a large number of martial artists. It then closed its mouth, and a crisp kacha was heard. It had actually swallowed the human martial artists whole. Since these martial artists could soar in the skies, they had definitely reached at least the level of flower blossoming tier, and based on Ling Han's observation, some of them were even above this level and could match him in ability in his last life. A few of these powerful martial artists were even above his level in his last life. Shattering Void Tier? It was at this moment that the images came to a sudden stop. Ling Han's vision changed and he had once again returned to his own room. That flash of images previously should have been the remaining pieces of memory remaining in this block of blood-sucking origin gold. However, because it was just a shattered piece, there was only a short flash of images. Ling Han could not help but engage in deduction. The giant of origin gold was finally defeated and shattered by the combined attacks of uncountable powerful warriors, and now its pieces were scattered all over the world. The blood-sucking origin gold was filled with the ability to absorb blood. Could it be that the giant was planning on making a comeback? Though he had only witnessed a short flash of memories, when he recalled that the giant of blood-sucking origin gold was something that could attract so many martial artists to work together and attack it, that was definitely proof of its unbelievable might and power. There were even a few ultimate warriors of shattering void tier mixed in the fray. If this thing could still come back to life, then who in this world would be able to stop it? That would definitely be a scene of total death and carnage. However, this should have happened in an ancient historical time. Merely from the scene that Ling Han had witnessed, there were hundreds of elite warriors in heaven tier, and there were no less than 5 ultimate warriors of shattering void tier. How the world of martial arts must have prospered then. Hold on, Jiang Yufeng and at least about 100 of elite warriors of heaven tier had also battled an ultimate warrior of shattering void tier to death. That was not far from his current time period. It was as if the field of martial arts suddenly experienced a boom, and all of a sudden, many people managed to break through to heaven tier. Ling Han was even more curious, and wanted to know about what had actually happened in that period of history. However, Rain Country had only been established for a few thousand years, and before that, it seemed as if there was a blank space in history. No one knew how the world was like before that. Looks like he would have to leave Rain Country and step into the wider world to be able to find out what had happened during that unknown period of history. Ling Han gathered his scattered thoughts. It was pointless to ponder further about it. What could his current cultivation level of merely the 7th layer of element gathering tier do? If there was really any kind of major catastrophe, there would be someone else stronger stepping up to the fore. Rain Country was only a small place, so the strongest existence here was only in flower blossoming tier. Who knows, when he left this place, it may not be a strange thing for him to hear of people who had actually reached the level of shattering void tier. The world changed and the field of martial arts was also constantly changing. There were times of prosperity, and there were also times of decline. A mental command from him, and the blood-sucking origin gold instantly transformed into various shapes with the stimulation of his mental commands. It could transform into metallic threads that were as thin as a spider's thread. It could also transform into metallic sheets that were thinner than even paper. It could also transform into the shape of a pig, goat, chicken, dog, and various other animals, though they were all tiny in size. Moreover, through the refining process of the strange fire, the blood-sucking origin gold had become even tougher and more durable. Even elites of spiritual pedestal tier would probably find it difficult to tear it apart. If he actually managed to coil it around the neck and give it a tug in a surprise attack, then even elite warriors of spiritual pedestal tier may die. He formed the blood-sucking origin gold into the shape of a bangle and placed it on his left wrist. When he came out of his room, Hunyo instantly clung onto him and rubbed her little head on his chest, and said, "Mean." Ling Han mean. How am I mean? Ling Han asked, smiling. You don't play with Nyo. The little girl pouted. Ling Han could not help but laugh, and said, all right. Then I'll just have to play with you for a while, all right? The play that Hunyo was saying was actually wrestling. It must have been taught by her mother tiger when she had still been in the tiger's den. Every move and stance, every attack and retreat were all signature moves of a tiger on the hunt for its prey. However, Hunyo possessed a terrifying comprehension ability in martial arts, and managed to adapt the moves that were not suitable to be used by human beings to her own use. The little girl was like a little tiger. She would pounce, smack, bite, and throw. Every move possessed a terrifying power behind it. Ling Han could not help but watch in captivation. There was no limit and restriction to the form of martial arts in the first place. Who had decided that a beast could not become a master and teach one martial arts? On the other hand, the ape's arm fists, tiger form palms, and others, weren't they all martial arts techniques that had been invented based on their ancestors' observation of the attacks of other animals? All of a sudden, his thoughts spread out, and his mindset was freed to a far-reaching world. He had entered a state of enlightenment. Enlightenment was a special condition that martial artists desperately desired to experience. Under this condition, they could possibly comprehend certain dilemmas of martial arts that they normally would not have been able to comprehend, and their level of martial arts may soar. However, this condition could only be encountered by chance, and not brought about consciously. According to deduction, it required the consciousness of a martial artist to be coordinated with the heavens and earth, so it was extremely mysterious. If a martial artist managed to enter the state of enlightenment once in his lifetime, that would be enough for him to thank the gods for this gift. Moreover, it would normally happen after one had reached flower blossoming tier, because only those who had cast off their mortal bodies would be qualified to achieve unity with the Tao of heaven and earth. In his last life, Ling Han had experienced enlightenment 3 times in total, but he had only managed to experience breakthroughs in alchemy. And the first time he experienced it was when he was in spiritual ocean tier. At that time, he was unbearably shocked, but he had never thought that it would appear even earlier in this lifetime. The surrounding spiritual chi all around him converged upon him, as if it had turned into multiple dragons that were furiously squeezing into his body. His cultivation level immediately began to spike, from the middle period of the 7th layer of element gathering tier to the late period, and then to the peak period. He did not have any problems with comprehension of his cultivation level at all. He merely experienced a slight pause and the door to the 8th layer of element gathering tier was open to him. Breaking through was that easy for him. Ling Han had not noticed at all. His heart and spirit were soaring in the world of martial arts. Every single bit of comprehension bloomed in front of him as if they were flowers. But when he reached out his hand to capture them, they immediately shattered into shadows. Illusion flowers flying in the air, or so he has heard. In the air, there were also multiple flashes of mysterious essences of martial arts flying past like they were shooting stars. Yet these were even harder to catch hold of. These were the Tao of nature, and were not something that the current Ling Han would be able to comprehend at all. If it was not for the fact that he had the support of his status as an elite warrior of heaven tier from his last life, he would only be at a complete loss in this world of martial arts. Yet now, he had managed to catch a glimpse of the mysteries of martial arts. From the early period of the 8th layer of element gathering tier to the middle period, to the late period, to the peak period. He used a mere few hours to accumulate the energy that he would have needed to accumulate over quite a considerable number of days. He did not even need to take any alchemical pills at all, it was as if the heavens had directly contributed to his advancement. As the saying goes, once you understood Tao, you would be granted salvation. Of course, Ling Han was still very far from reaching this level, but his advancement was more than enough to attract the jealousy of others. Hong, his body gave a slight tremble and he had stepped into the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Ling Han's eyes suddenly snapped open. At first, he looked slightly confused, but then came back to reality. He could not help but smile. He turned around to see that Hu Niu was seated by his side, imitating his posture, as if she was also cultivating. There was actually a sliver of seriousness on her little face. Pung, pung, pung. It was at this moment that a hurried knocking was heard from the door. Chapter 174, Feng Luo's Act of Violence. Ling Han went over to open the door and saw that it was Zhu Shui at the door. She was currently in a great state of anxiety and panic. Big brother Ling. Zhu Shui immediately greeted, as if she had finally managed to gain a pillar of support the moment her eyes set upon Ling Han. Instantly, her worried demeanor relaxed considerably. What's happened? Ling Han asked. The academy expelled Li Hao. Zhu Shui said furiously. What? Ling Han frowned. Has he committed some crime? No. Zhu Shui shook her head, and forced out through gritted teeth, it's Feng Luo. He brought with him a teacher of the academy, and expelled Li Hao from the academy for no reason at all. He even said that it was because Li Hao was a friend of Big Brother Ling. Instantly, Ling Han's eyes became as sharp as swords, as rage slowly rose in his heart. Feng Luo is really out of control. He had his lackeys injure Li Hao and force him to lower his head, and the teacher from the academy actually pretended he had not seen anything at all. When I saw things were getting worse, I immediately rushed over to you and hope that you can uphold the justice for Li Hao. Zhu Shui said, crying. If he was really expelled from the academy, then Li Hao would never be able to hold his head high again when he returned. Moreover, his future prospects would become extremely limited. Ling Han revealed a strong fury in his demeanor. He had already expected that Feng Yan and his brother would seek him out for revenge, and he did not have any fear. As a martial artist, how could it be possible if he would not offend a few people in his lifetime? Yet Feng Luo actually targeted his friends. That was too shameless. Whatever the enmity, family members should never be dragged into the matter. That was the unwritten rule of martial artists. Unless it was some kind of life or death enmity that could not be dissolved, only then would one actually make the move to eliminate the whole clan of his foe, or even include anyone else that had the slightest bit of relation to him. The enmity between him and Feng Luo, at best, was only a minor conflict. "Bring me to them," Ling Han said darkly. Zhu Shui was delighted, and hurriedly brought Ling Han with her to Li Hao's quarters. She had seen how the third imperial prince and his guests had treated Ling Han at the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, so she believed that if Ling Han were to act, then things could still be redeemed. The two of them were in a rush, so very quickly, they arrived at the students' hostel. This was where the ordinary disciples lived. Unlike true disciples, who had a courtyard to themselves, a few ordinary disciples would share a single courtyard, and the treatment was completely different. Feng Luo had made a comeback and was unbearably arrogant, making no attempts to hide his actions at all. On the other hand, he wanted nothing more than to inform everyone in the academy of it, to let them see how impressive and mighty he was now. Thus, there was a large number of people watching the scene. Some were sympathetic, some were rejoicing in Li Hao's misfortune, while others were completely indifferent. Any circle would be able to show the multiple facets of human nature. In the middle of the crowd, Li Hao was already covered with injuries and lying on the ground. Feng Luo had one foot firmly stepping on Li Hao's face, and Li Hao's fingers were visibly entrenched deeply into the ground beneath him. It was obvious to the rest how furious he was at this moment. Ling Han's eyes were like swords of ice. As he strode forwards, those around seemed to be able to sense his current rage. They turned around, and when they saw the icy expression on his face, they subconsciously retreated a few steps, and opened up a path for him to pass through. This also included the few students who were in gushing spring tear. They were both surprised and confused about how they could be scared off by a fellow student merely in element-gathering tear. The crowd separated like flowing water, and a direct path to the center of the crowd appeared. Feng Luo immediately turned around and looked to find that it was Ling Han. A sliver of arrogance appeared on his face. He smiled cockily, and said, "Ling Han, did you see, I have returned." Ling Han did not say anything. He merely continued his advance without pause. "Ha ha ha, are you extremely displeased? So what if you are? I want you to be very displeased." Feng Luo smirked coldly, and deliberately rubbed his foot on Li Hao's face a few times. "This is your friend? Then I'm really sorry. I did everything on purpose. Don't say that I didn't give him a chance." Feng Luo shrugged, and continued, "I told him that as long as he cut off all relations with you from now onwards, and announced all the evil acts and crimes you have committed in public, then I would let him off. Who knew that this brat would be so stubborn and so stupidly loyal that he was actually not willing to betray you? The kind of person I hate the most would be this kind of unreasonable idiot, so I could only thrash him until he will admit the error of his ways. Don't worry, there could not be so many idiots in this world. In future, I will go seek out Li Dongyu, Jin Wuji, and the others, and I believe that they would not be as stupid as this." Feng Luo paused, and when he saw the ice-cold expression on Ling Han's face, he felt great delight. The more humiliated Ling Han was, the happier he would be. In fact, he wanted nothing more than to give a few furious stomps on that face of his. "What is it? Do you want to step on me? Unfortunately, you will not be able to. Just take a look, my brother had his 4 great guardian deities come over to become my guards, and all of them are in gushing spring tear. Forcing you into submission would be a piece of cake for them. Everyone here is the same. I can beat up anyone I don't like the look of, but none of them would dare to touch a single hair on my head. Come and beat me up, you idiot. If you have the balls to, come thrash me." Feng Luo laughed loudly, obviously very pleased with himself. He did not have any reservations about entering into mocking everyone mode. At this, quite a few people looked furious. It was necessary for rules to be in place in order to restrict anyone's actions at any time. That way, there would be a limit to how far they would go. Yet Feng Luo actually broke these rules. She would be able to thrash anyone he liked. who would be able to feel safe again? Still, where did he get such overwhelming confidence from? One had to know that even the members of the main branch of the 8 great clans would not dare to say such words, and the imperial family of Rain Country would not say something like that either, as they were the ones who decided the rules, so how could they break their own rules so publicly? What basis did Feng Luo have to say these words? One had to understand that not even Feng Yen was much of anything in the vicinity of the imperial city, what more this kind of spoiled profligate. Hee, don't glare at me like that. I'm very scared. Feng Luo deliberately made a fearful face, but he immediately glared and stomped harshly on Li Hao. Damn, who do you think you are? You're just a lowly dog from Grey Cloud Town, and you still dare to abuse your power in front of me? Today, I will let you understand that opposing me was the most idiotic choice that you have made in this lifetime. I want you to watch as your friend, because of his relationship with you, has his arm crippled by me, and become a cripple forever. After saying so coldly, his right hand holding a sword, his eyes fixed upon Li Hao's right arm, obviously intending to cripple this arm of Li Hao's. For a saber wielder, having the arm that wielded his saber crippled would mean that he would become an absolute cripple. Everyone was shocked. This was the Huyang Academy, and there was obviously a teacher present here, yet Feng Luo actually dared to commit such a violent crime so publicly in front of everyone. Could it be that his Feng clan had become the boss of the academy? Ha ha ha. Feng Luo laughed loudly, raised his sword and lowered it in a slash. Li Hao! Zhu Shui screamed shrilly, grief-stricken. She was filled with anguish, and had already spat out a mouthful of blood in her emotional turmoil. Xiao, it was at this moment that Ling Han moved swiftly, and his figure shot towards Feng Luo. Get lost! Those 4 young men standing behind Feng Luo all made their own moves. 4 hands attacked in unison, origin power rolled out in a powerful wave, and became 4 huge palms that aimed towards Ling Han. They were 4 elites of Gushing Spring Tier even though all of them were only in the first layer. However, Gushing Spring Tier would still be Gushing Spring Tier, and would be able to completely suppress an opponent who was merely in Element Gathering Tier, what more when there were 4 of them. Even if they had not used any kind of martial arts technique in their attacks, they were still incomparably powerful. Chapter 175, Ling Han's Rage. A frosty aura emanated from Ling Han as he stepped forwards to parry the attacks of these 4 men. Was he seeking death? The combined attacks of 4 elites of Gushing Spring Tier caused someone who was merely in Element Gathering Tier to actually neither dodge or avoid, but step forwards to receive their attacks head-on. Where did he get such courage from? Pung, 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 pung. A series of blasts were heard and instantly, the expressions of the observers became utterly astonished. They could only watch as 4 figures were flung outwards from a heavy impact, and who could these 4 figures be but the 4 guardian deities of Feng Yen? Ling Han did not even pause, and had already arrived at a spot right above Feng Luo's head. Pa, and his foot was firmly stomped onto Feng Luo's head. Tong! A muffled sound was heard and Feng Luo's entire head was firmly pressed into the ground. He was forced to kneel on the ground while his arms were helplessly hanging by his sides and his bottom was raised high, as if it was a chrysanthemum flower about to blossom. Wah! Ling Han's figure dropped down onto the ground, and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. That was not because he had been injured by the 4 guardian deities. In fact, it was because he had injured himself when he had stepped out earlier on in order to stimulate the lone wolf's blood. He had not had the chance to spit it out earlier on. Dead silence filled the air. A martial artist in Element Gathering Tier actually defeated 4 elites of Gushing Spring Tier. Who could actually believe such a feat was possible? Who could accept such a reality? Though Ling Han had indeed suffered some injury and spat out blood, this could not in any way conceal his radiance. That was too awesome, wasn't it? Ling Han finally smiled calmly, and said, now that there is no longer a fly noisily buzzing around, the world has indeed become much more peaceful and quieter. Li Hao. Zhu Shui had covered her face earlier, as she could not bear to watch as Li Hao was crippled at Feng Luo's hands. But when she heard the astonished gasps of those around her, she opened her eyes and saw that not only was Li Hao not injured, even Feng Luo was subdued. She could not help but be overjoyed at the turn of events, and rushed over to him. Ling Han helped Li Hao up, and said, "I've involved you in this matter. Aren't we friends?" Li Hao asked. Friends, that's right, we're friends." Ling Hao clapped a hand on Li Hao's shoulder. In the past, he had only felt that he wanted to give a hand to Li Hao on his way to great accomplishment, but after the matter today, he had finally accepted Li Hao as a true friend. For his friends, Ling Hao could become completely crazy. "Shui, take care of Li Hao. I still have some debts to settle with somebody," Ling Han said darkly. Li Hao had been horribly beaten up, and would at least need about a month to rest and recover from his injuries. "Ling Han, do you know what you are doing?" The four guardian deities all came towards him, speaking loudly, a powerful, threatening air emanating from all of them. They were only flung out of the battle by the impact, but had not suffered any injuries. Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and said calmly, "You all should feel that you are very lucky that this is the academy. That's why I will only cripple you, but will still leave you with your lives." "Insolence," the four guardian deities all shouted in unison. This brat was really too outrageously bold. One had to know that although they were flung out of battle with a single move, that was also because they had been too careless, and had underestimated Ling Han's ability. One only had to look at how they were completely unharmed, and would be able to know that they were indeed very powerful martial artists. "Let go of young Master Luo," one of the guardian deities said. These four guardian deities had been named respectively as Tiger, Elephant, Panther, and Wolf, and the person who had spoken was the Elephant guardian deity. "Oh, now that you mention it. I almost forgot." Ling Han smiled. He used a foot to kick at Feng Luo's bottom and said, "This is the master of you four dogs. Come, kneel down and greet your master." "What?" The four guardian deities glared furiously. He actually wanted them to kneel. "What is it? Can't you even kneel down for the sake of your master?" Ling Han said calmly as he drew out his sword. "Then who knows, if I'm not happy, maybe I would slice off one of his arms in my displeasure." The four guardian deities were all shocked. They had naturally not placed any importance on Feng Luo, but Feng Luo was still Feng Yan's brother. They had already received Feng Yan's command to protect and guard Feng Luo. If Feng Luo was crippled right in front of their eyes, how could they be able to face Feng Yan again? "Teacher Yang, this brat intends to commit violence in public. I would like to request Teacher Yang to step forwards to stop him," the wolf guardian deity said to the teacher who had been standing at one side and merely watching as things went on. This Teacher Yang was also only in gushing spring tier, but his status was different. The words of a teacher of Hu Yang Academy would naturally be worth more. Teacher Yang was feeling extremely displeased. Previously, when Feng Luo took advantage of his position to kick Li Hao around and had completely ignored the rules of the academy, he was already very displeased. However, he had received the command to cooperate with Feng Luo in every way he required before he had come, and so could only conceal his displeasure in his heart. When he saw how Ling Han had stomped Feng Luo into the ground, he was actually very pleased, and had secretly praised Ling Han. Yet he never thought that Feng Luo and his accomplices were really too shameless. When it was them breaking the rules, they had pretended he was not present at all, and now that it was others breaking the same rules, they actually pushed him out into this matter. He really did not want to involve himself in this matter, but when he recalled the command he had received earlier on, he could only sigh helplessly and said, "Ling Han, it is forbidden to injure others within the academy grounds. Aren't you going to let go of him?" When these words were spoken, everyone else instantly erupted in an uproar. What did that mean? Just now, when Feng Luo was going to injure Li Hao grievously, why had he not said such words? Is this still the academy? No, no, no. Is this still the Huyang Academy of Rain Country? Why do I feel as if the academy is now owned by the Feng clan? That's right. Even the imperial princes and princesses have to follow the rules when they are in the academy. Could it be that Feng Yan and Feng Luo are even above the imperial family of Rain Country in status? I disagree. Me too. They all began to shout loudly. It was Li Hao today, but it could be any of them tomorrow. When there was no restriction enforced on them by the rules, the consequences would be too widespread. Naturally, everyone felt fear and apprehension in face of such a reality. Teacher Yang could not help but become speechless. He had been feeling guilty in the first place, and now, he naturally was unable to present a righteous front. On one side, he had his orders, but on the other, he also had his own ethics to conform to. As his orders and ethics came into a conflict, he finally sighed and said, I am not going to take control of this matter anymore. He directly turned around and left, and was really not planning on getting involved in this issue anymore. The four guardian deities were all ashen, and humphed at his actions. Ling Han, what do you want in order to release young Master Luo? The elephant guardian deity asked. Ling Han merely glanced at him, then said, that's easy. He caused severe injuries to my friend, and even intended to slice off one of his arms. Then I will beat him half dead, and slice off both his arms. That's all. You're going too far, the wolf guardian deity shouted furiously. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, I'm the type of person who will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Anyone who breaks one of my fingers, I will break his arm in vengeance. I have only doubled the punishment this time round, so that is already pretty merciful of me. You dare. The four guardian deities all charged towards Ling Han at the same time. They wanted to create a storm of attacks that would make Ling Han not have the chance to make a move on Feng Luo. As long as they managed to rescue Feng Luo. Ling Han was only an element gathering tier, so no matter how strange he was, how far could he go? Ling Han's foot gave a flick, and Feng Luo immediately emerged from the ground. He picked Feng Luo up and waved him around as if he was a weapon to parry the attacks of the four guardian deities. When he used this human weapon, the four guardian deities naturally dared not press their attack any further and quickly stepped back. At this moment, a young man merely in element gathering tier was seen to be greatly showing off his might, forcing four elites of gushing spring tier to retreat pathetically, not daring to parry even a single attack. Despicable. Shameless, the four guardian deities all shouted angrily. Chapter 176, definitely crippling him. When they saw how Ling Han acted like he was shooing away a flock of ducks, the spectators could not help but want to laugh. Wherever he stepped, the four guardian deities would disperse as if they were a flock of birds. The spectators were also secretly amazed at Ling Han's overwhelming courage to actually dare to oppose Feng Yan. Feng Yan had now neatly become the king of the academy. First, when the imperial guards came to the academy to apprehend him, they were forced to retreat in the face of Lian Guangzu's tough attitude, and there was actually no sign of anger from the imperial family. In the end, the matter was simply settled peacefully. Next, Feng Luo, who had been expelled from the academy, returned and even attempted to commit a violent crime right in public. Even a teacher of the academy could only stand by and watch helplessly. This was practically out of control and with completely zero regard for any rules. Not even a core disciple and the son of the emperor like the third imperial prince would dare to act so boldly, yet Feng Yan dared. And now that someone who actually dared to oppose the Feng clan appeared, how could they not all give him a thumbs up and praise him for his courage? Ha ha ha. The spectators all laughed loudly. They did not dare to so publicly oppose Feng Yan, but a little harmless laughter should be fine. He couldn't possibly hold a grudge over a little laughter, right? The four guardian deities felt angry, enraged, and helpless all at once. In terms of ability, they were sure that they could completely suppress Ling Han, but he had a hostage in his hands, so they could only be cautious in their movements. There was no way for them to put all their efforts in. They could only run around all over the place, and this made them feel unbearably sullen. Ling Han did not treasure the weapon in his hands. He simply crashed, hit, threw, and banged the weapon any which way he liked. Under such treatment, Feng Luo was actually awakened by the pains in his body. Ling Han, he screamed shrilly, an incomparable rage brimming in his tone. How many times was this? That he had experienced a loss at Ling Han's hands? I want you to die. I want you to die, he roared furiously. If he couldn't even vent his anger through an enraged roar, he would go crazy. Oh, you're awake? Ling Han gave a cold, eerie smile, and simply tossed Feng Luo onto the ground. That's good. I want you to watch how your 2 arms are sliced off. Why you dare? Feng Luo was terrified. Why do I not dare? Ling Han said calmly. Just now, you wanted to slice off my friend's arm, and now I can't slice off your arm? Or is it that you think that I can't even compare to an idiot like you? My brother would definitely not spare you. Feng Luo caught onto the last sliver of hope for him threatening Ling Han with his brother. You speak as if your brother would become my underling once I let you go. Ling Han shook his head, and waved his sword a bit. Cherish the moment now and gaze for a moment longer at your 2 arms, as very quickly, you will be saying an eternal farewell to them. No. 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 Feng Luo was finally so terrified that he had started to cry with snot and tears. He did not want to become a handicap. He was still young, and if he lost his arms, how would he be able to bully others or play with beautiful women in the future? Stop, the 4 guardian deities all shouted in unison. No one would be able to save him. Ling Han shook his head, his voice cold as ice. Oh, then what about me? A voice filled with dignity rang out and Feng Yan appeared. He had his hands behind his back as if he were an emperor, and was exuding an powerful aura of domination. Milord, the 4 guardian deities all fell into a half-kneeling position, respectfully paying their greetings. Brother, save me. Save me. Feng Luo was both surprised and delighted. In his eyes, there was nothing that Feng Yan could not do. As long as his brother was here, he would be saved. And who do you think you are? Ling Han asked calmly. There was no hint of disdain in his tone, as if he was merely stating a very ordinary statement of truth. Feng Yan could not help as killing intent rose within him, but when his eyes swept over Feng Luo, he said, "Let go of my brother, and I can spare you this one time." You speak as if you have some kind of special status. Ling Han snorted. Since you 2 brothers are finally both here, then I can get started. He raised his sword. What? He had not acted before, because he was deliberately waiting for Feng Yan to appear. This was really too arrogant of him, wasn't it? Deliberately waiting for Feng Yan to appear to make his move, was he trying to form a life-or-death enmity with Feng Yan? What the others did not know was that these 2 young men already had a life-or-death enmity between them. However, in Feng Yan's eyes, he could very easily erase Ling Han's existence from this world, and did not take it seriously at all. Brother! Brother! Feng Luo maniacally struggled and cried out, crying so much that his face was covered with snot and tears. In the end, Feng Yan was moved, and said, "If you dare, then I will definitely kill you today." Both sides were similarly ruthless. One side wanted to slice off the arms of someone, while the other side declared loudly the intention to commit murder. It was as if neither of them took the rules of the academy or the laws of Rain Country to heart. Idiot! Ling Han said coldly, and his sword lowered swiftly in a strike. You are seeking death. Feng Yan shot towards Ling Han. With his ability, he at least had a 70% chance of blocking Ling Han's sword strike successfully. He was indeed very fast, as if he was a furious arrow. Just when Ling Han's sword was about to fall onto Feng Luo's shoulder, Feng Yan's hand struck forwards as well. Origin power rolled out and wrapped around his palm, making his whole arm turn white silver, brilliantly lit. Ling Han humphed and flicked his left hand. Instantly, strange fire wrapped around his fist, which struck towards Feng Yan. Immediately, Feng Yan's expression changed. He could sense that the flames wrapped around Ling Han's fist had the ability to threaten his life. Though this was only a feeling, he believed very strongly in his feelings, as they had helped him survive many dangers and hazards previously. At this moment, he fully displayed his extraordinary prowess. He suddenly struck a fist onto the ground and unbelievably stopped in his advance due to the opposing force of the solid ground. Then he quickly stepped back in retreat. Ling Han's fist could only hit empty air. However, though Feng Yan could dodge and retreat, Feng Luo could not. Pooh! Blood spilled and Feng Luo released a terrible scream. His right arm was completely sliced off. He really sliced it off. He really did. Everyone was shocked. The Feng clan brothers were already more than out of control, but Ling Han was not the least bit inferior to them. He actually did slice off Feng Luo's arm with a strike of his sword. Ah! Ah! The area was dead silent, except for Feng Luo's terrible screams of agony, resounding around. Feng Yan's face turned completely ashen, and he said darkly, "You have successfully enraged me. Today, there is no other fate for you but death." You're angry just with this?" Ling Han asked calmly. "I still have one arm left to slice." Hiss, this guy really planned to cripple both of Feng Yan's arms. It was as if two solidified bursts of killing intent were suddenly shot from Feng Yan's eyes. When he looked at Ling Han, it was as if he wanted to stare a hole into him. He said, "If you dare to touch another hair on my brother's head, I will kill all your clansmen and everyone related to you." Shua, Ling Han's sword once again lowered, giving Feng Yan the most direct, as well as the most unyielding answer. Fuck. Feng Yan could not stop himself from cursing. He once again shot forwards, but he dared not come too closely this time round. Instead, he punched a fist forwards, and his origin power suddenly solidified into a few tens of silver fists that transformed into a powerful barrage of blows heading in Ling Han's direction. Black-grade low-level martial arts technique, torrential fists. The ability of an elite in the 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier added together with the power upgrade of a black-grade low-level martial arts technique was definitely not something that a weaker martial artist of Gushing Spring tier could stand against, no matter what kind of monster he was. The fists would strike violently and randomly, as if they were drops of rain falling in a torrential rainstorm. How could this be blocked? Ling Han's right hand held onto his sword in a stance, but his left hand stretched open. A black-colored thing spread open, as if it was an umbrella, and when it was fully spread out, it transformed into a circular object very similar to a shield that completely protected Ling Han behind it. Blood-sucking origin gold, an item that could transform according to his will. Chapter 177, The Eldest Imperial Prince has arrived. Pung, 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 pung. Feng Yan's fists crashed into the blood-sucking origin gold and actually created flashes of silver light upon impact. That was the origin power of the fists being shattered and once again transforming back into spiritual qi. With Feng Yan's current ability, he was not yet able to break through the shield of blood-sucking origin gold, but he was indeed much more powerful than Ling Han. The extremely powerful impacts were like rolling waves that crashed into the shield repeatedly, forcing Ling Han to retreat uncontrollably again and again. When he saw the blade of his sword was getting farther and farther away from Feng Luo's shoulder, Ling Han gave a cold humph, and 6 flashes of sword chi swept forwards at the same time. Pooh! Feng Luo's left arm was also unable to escape from the fate of being sliced off. Ah! Feng Luo had fainted from the agony of his right arm being sliced off, but this strike actually caused him enough pain to wake him from his unconscious state. Ling Han quickly shot back in a retreat, and drew back his left hand. The blood-sucking origin gold once again transformed back into a bangle that encircled his wrist. He looked a bit pale. After all, even with his body of dead tree ability, suffering such a round of powerful attacks caused him to feel as if his body was boiling, so he was in a lot of pain. The area was once again in dead silence. Upon the first glance, Feng Yan was naturally at the advantage in their clash, being able to force Ling Han to retreat simply by punching a fist at empty air. However, Ling Han had still managed to slice off Feng Luo's other arm with a single strike and retreat completely unscathed, so it also looked like it was his victory. Awesome, he was really too awesome. Not just having power, but also courage. Feng Yan's face was filled with a powerful killing intent that transformed into a solid state encircling around his body. His younger brother had both his arms crippled right in front of his eyes. This caused killing intent to blaze within him. He really had to kill Ling Han. Would definitely not let this matter go. Your previous actions have completely forfeited your own life, he said with a wooden, expressionless face. As he walked towards Ling Han, his right hand gave a wave and drew out the long saber from his waist. It was eerily cold like autumn waters, and was obviously an amazing weapon. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "You have already moved twice, and I'm still standing here completely unharmed. Your ability only goes so far." Although that's what he said, he dared not underestimate Feng Yan in the slightest. After all, when he added together the different cultivation levels of both him and Feng Yan, they actually had a gap of 7 whole layers. "Today, no one will be able to save you," Feng Yan declared coldly. Every step he took created a heavy sound, and it was as if his steps were falling on their hearts, making everyone feel very uncomfortable. "Oh, has this rain country changed surnames to Feng?" A clear voice rang out, and a tall man walked over. He looked to be about 30 years old, and was quite handsome. He was dressed in a crimson embroidered robe, and walked with a majestic gait, possessing the aura of a king. About a meter behind this man was a plain-looking middle-aged man, who followed his steps closely. Eldest Imperial Prince. It's the eldest Imperial Prince. Why is the eldest Imperial Prince suddenly here? Didn't he leave the academy 2 years ago? Coincidence? This is getting fun now. Feng Yan completely takes himself to be the boss of the academy, but the eldest Imperial Prince is the real owner here. Is this a sign that these two are about to come into conflict? No matter how awesome Feng Yan is, he would not dare to oppose the eldest Imperial Prince publicly, would he? Not necessarily. Just take a look at Feng Luo's previous arrogant display and look at how Feng Yan wants to commit murder in broad daylight. They have obviously no regard for the Emperor's laws at all. Let's just wait and see. The spectators all started murmuring their thoughts and ideas to each other. Now that things had come this far, it was already a bit out of control. Even the eldest Imperial Prince had come to involve himself in the matter. "Feng Yan, why are you not paying your greetings when you see the eldest Imperial Prince?" the middle-aged man behind the eldest Imperial Prince rebuked coldly. Feng Yan slightly hesitated for a moment, then raised his clasped hands in the eldest Imperial Prince's direction and said, "Feng Yan hereby greets your Imperial Highness, the eldest Imperial Prince." How arrogant, he actually only raised his clasped hands in greeting. The middle-aged man was about to speak up in reprimand again when he saw the eldest Imperial Prince stretch out an arm, which forced the former to swallow whatever words he was about to say. "Feng Yan, step back," the eldest Imperial Prince said. This man has crippled both my brother's arms and I'm going to take his life in return, Feng Yan said in a calm tone after regaining control over his emotions. However, although he spoke calmly, there was a determination that lay behind his words that said he would not be refused. The eldest imperial prince could not help but look displeased. With his status, in the whole Rain country, aside from the clan heads of the 8 great clans of Rain country, Lian Guangzhu, Wu Songlin and the other rare few at the same level, who would dare to not give him face? Feng Yan, you have overstepped your bounds, the eldest imperial prince said coldly. Though he was not the emperor yet, at a certain level, he could represent the imperial family. Any words he said had enormous weight behind them, so how could his words simply be refused like that? He crippled my brother, and I will take his life in exchange. Isn't this fair? Feng Yan displayed his overbearing and unreasonable nature, actually not giving the slightest face to the eldest imperial prince at all. Feng Yan, do you have any idea what you are doing now? The eldest imperial prince asked. He was also angered by now. Any lands under the skies were all under imperial authority, who would dare to disobey the words of the emperor? I have long heard that the eldest imperial prince was a core disciple of Huyang Academy in the previous generation. Please allow this Feng Yan to experience your ability, Feng Yan said. The area erupted in an uproar. Feng Yan actually pitted himself against the eldest imperial prince. Putting aside the eldest imperial prince's status, when he left the academy 2 years ago, he was a core disciple. Though he had yet to break through to spiritual ocean tier now, he was definitely in the 9th layer of gushing spring tier, and added together with the eldest imperial prince's talent in martial arts, he was practically invincible in the gushing spring tier. In the current Huyang Academy, the 3rd imperial prince was considered the most powerful student, but he was only in the 7th layer of gushing spring tier, and even he would most likely lose against the eldest imperial prince. Feng Yan was only a true disciple, so where did he get the courage and confidence to think that he was worthy of opposing the 3rd imperial prince? The eldest imperial prince could not help but grow even angrier. This Feng Yan not only dared to disobey his commands, he even wanted to challenge him. He was indeed outrageously bold. However, as the eldest imperial prince, he was a very subtle person and so would naturally not show any sign of his emotions on his face as he asked calmly, "You really want to challenge me?" "Please." Feng Yan said very decisively. The aura from his whole body came out in a wave, emanating a powerful might. 7th layer of gushing spring tier. The eldest imperial prince could not help but look astonished. How had Feng Yan risen to such a formidable height in such a short period of time? What, 7th layer of gushing spring tier, really? Since the eldest imperial prince has said so, then it is most likely true. No wonder he actually dared to challenge the eldest imperial prince, so he is in the 7th layer of gushing spring tier. That's not right. Even if he is in spiritual ocean tier, so what? That's the eldest imperial prince there. That's true. I really don't know what backer Feng Yan has. Could it be he really is the illegitimate son of the headmaster? All of the spectators were exclaiming in surprise. That was the 7th layer of gushing spring tier, and Feng Yan had actually caught up with the 3rd imperial prince, but when one took into account Feng Yan's young age, he could definitely be considered as the most talented and strongest genius of Rain country. No wonder he dared to challenge me. The eldest imperial prince's expression darkened, and he said, "Then, make your move." Without any reservation, Feng Yan leaped forwards in the eldest imperial prince's direction. He did not use his saber, but simply used his fists to create a barrage of attacks. There was a layer of silvery light wrapped around his fists, which exuded an unusually powerful aura. Using fists in front of me? The eldest imperial prince humphed and a cold light flashed through his eyes. He similarly attacked with his fists. It was as if an emperor had arrived, which caused an irrepressible pounding to rise up in everyone's hearts. They all felt the urge to kneel down on the ground and declare themselves to be loyal subjects of the eldest imperial prince. Son of Heaven Fist Technique. Pung, 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 pung. The two of them clashed endlessly, and the eldest imperial prince visibly had the upper hand. His cultivation level was higher, he had greater power, and the Son of Heaven Fist Technique dominated over Feng Yan's own martial arts technique in terms of grade. If he was still unable to gain the advantage in the clash with all these factors in play, then it was really illogical. Ling Han's eyes narrowed slightly, and when he looked upon the silvery light exuding from Feng Yan, he murmured to himself, "Special physical constitution?" Chapter 178, Mirror Light Body. This had to be a special physical constitution, Ling Han said decisively in his mind. If it was not due to his special physical constitution, Feng Yan would have been blasted to pieces by the eldest imperial prince by now. Though Feng Yan was at a disadvantage in their clash, he was still composed and calm. When he defended himself, he would also press forwards in attack, and every move contained a great explosive burst of power behind it. What special physical constitution could that be? Ling Han was observing very closely. The reason why special physical constitutions could be described as special was naturally because they had certain characteristics that made them special and unique. For example, Zhu Wujiu could recover from his wounds very rapidly, Hu Niu could transform whatever food she consumed into her own reserves of origin power, and he, with his acquired special physical constitution, could greatly increase his defenses, and like a dead tree, would feel nothing even when he suffered serious injury, not allowing the pain to affect him, and continue to display his battle prowess to the fullest. So what special characteristic did Feng Yan have, then? Hong, Hong, Hong. Feng Yan and the eldest imperial prince endlessly clashed, and there was only brute force behind every fist, without any hint of technique. As the power behind their fists clashed against each other, the impact actually created a power wave that was visible to the naked eye, and this shockwave was spreading out in all directions, forcing the spectators to step back in retreat continuously. Ling Han had noticed that Feng Yan's complexion was becoming more and more brightly white, and this was definitely not due to the use of origin power. It seemed more like that was the real color of his complexion. Could it be mirror light body? He mumbled. Though he was still dubious, it was almost confirmed for him. The owner of mirror light body had the ability to reflect any attacks he suffered, as if he himself was a mirror reflecting light. However, even a special physical constitution could be split up into different categories based on the purity of the bloodline. Thus, there were roughly 3 categories for mirror light body. Weakest of all was the bronze mirror body, which could only reflect about 10% of every attack, and the next strongest was silver mirror body, which could increase the rate of reflection to 20%, while the strongest, the gold mirror body, could reflect about 30% of every attack. Don't underestimate the 10 to 30% of attack that could be reflected. It not only would decrease the power behind an opponent's attack, it could even become one's own power that could be aimed back at your opponent. In a simpler example, at first, it was 10 points of attack power against 10 points of attack power. Then, even if it had only become 9 points against 11 points, the gap would have increased by 20%, what more when it was 7 points against 13. That was practically 100% gap in power. From the looks of Feng Yan, he should have a silver mirror body, and was able to reflect about 20% of the attacks. It was exactly this 20% of power reflected back that compensated for the difference of 2 layers in cultivation level behind Feng Yan and the eldest imperial prince. As a result, though Feng Yan was still at an obvious disadvantage, he was not defeated. That's not right. Ling Han shook his head. The 20% of power could possibly compensate for the difference in cultivation levels, but could not compensate for the inferiority of Feng Yan's martial arts technique as compared to the eldest imperial prince's Son of Heaven Fist technique, which most likely should have reached black grade high level. It was not that this fist technique was of a high grade by itself, but with the installation of power of the nation, it could have might that could compare to a black grade high-level martial arts technique. Since Feng Yan was able to stand against the Son of Heaven fist technique with a mere black grade low-level martial arts technique, then he must definitely have had some other ability. Otherwise, he would at least have to be on the same cultivation level as his opponent, and depend on the mirror light body to compensate for the gap in their respective martial arts techniques. What could it be? Ling Han could not help but become curious. The eldest imperial prince's battle prowess was outstanding. Though he had been stuck on this 9th layer of gushing spring tier for quite some years, it had also allowed him to fortify his foundations on this cultivation level to an unbearably sturdy level. His current battle prowess should be worth about 12 battle stars. And it was obvious that neither side had played their trump cards yet. At least, both these young men had formed Qi, but neither of them had used it yet. If Qi was taken into consideration, then their battle prowess could obviously increase further. The spectators were all watching dumbfounded. The eldest imperial prince was in the 9th layer of gushing spring tier and was a core disciple in his time, yet Feng Yan could actually manage to not fall in a clash with him. This guy was really too strong. The 3rd imperial prince, Xiaofan, Ken Yi, the current generation of core disciples, most likely were no longer able to match Feng Yan anymore, right? Though they were on opposing sides, Ling Han could strongly agree that Feng Yan was indeed powerful. This guy was indeed a genius of martial arts, not only having mysterious means but also a terrifyingly strong understanding of battle, and as he continued to watch, he would often nod in approval. Feng Yan just barely made the cut to being worthy enough to be trampled by him. The eldest imperial prince was like an emperor, while Feng Yan was like a demon god who freely displayed his domineering attitude, unreasonable and insolent. However, the two of them managed to keep their clash on even standing. In the condition when neither side was willing to play more of their trump cards, the battle had come to a deadlock. Stop! An old voice rang out, though this voice held within it incomparable might. Feng Yan and the eldest imperial prince both stopped attacking, though they still looked at each other fiercely, their battle spirit still high, as if wanting to continue battling to their heart's content. Lian Guangzhu appeared, and the aura of an elite of spiritual pedestal tier spread out, causing everyone to feel as if there was a gigantic rock pressing down on their hearts. They could feel that their feet were strangely heavy and an urge to kneel down. He took one look at Ling Han, shook his head, and said, "Little fellow, you really know how to make trouble." Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "Headmaster, it's not that I am really good at making trouble, but this blind fool actually came to look for trouble purposely with me. Thus, I could only slice him up a bit to give him a lesson. But I am still very merciful, and did not take his life." He was a little curious. Previously, Lian Guangzhu was obviously very optimistic about his martial arts talent, and looked practically like he wanted to cultivate Ling Han like a disciple, yet there had suddenly been no news from him at all, and now there was obviously a drastic change in attitude from him. What a sharp mouth that is skilled at overturning facts. Do you think everyone is an idiot? You crippled my brother's arms, and this is already a breach of academy regulations. According to the rules, you should be killed for your crime. Feng Yan said darkly. Feng Yan, though I have just come here, and did not see the start and finish of this whole matter clearly, but it seems as if it was your brother who had threatened to slice someone else's arm first, right? The eldest imperial prince interrupted. Since you did not see clearly the start and the end of the matter, then shut up. Feng Yan cast a cold glance at the eldest imperial prince. Pooh! Everyone was shocked speechless. Did Feng Yan actually reprimand the eldest imperial prince? A younger member of a minor clan actually dared to openly reprimand the eldest son of the current reign emperor. What kind of outrageously bold act was that? Immediately, the eldest imperial prince's face turned ashen, and a powerful killing intent was brimming in his eyes. As the saying goes, when the emperor goes into a rage, blood could flow over 10,000 miles. Though he was not the emperor yet, as the eldest imperial prince, he was still very powerful and mighty. You didn't see the start and the end of the matter either, so what are you blabbering so excitedly about? Ling Han opened his mouth and said to Feng Yan in castigation. All right, this was an awesome guy too. Everyone else felt like they were about to lose their minds. Whether it was Ling Han or Feng Yan, where had they gotten such strong confidence to dare to create such a commotion? Headmaster, please apprehend Ling Han and hand him over to me to be dealt with. Feng Yan turned and said to Lian Guangzhu. Though his words were polite, it seemed as if he was requesting Lian Guangzhu to do as he requested. To make a request of an elite of spiritual pedestal tier, and someone who held the revered position of headmaster of the martial arts department? The others were all in disbelief. Though Feng Yan had offended the eldest imperial prince previously, the latter was still in gushing spring tier, after all. In this world where the most important thing was martial arts ability, the eldest imperial prince was far from being able to compare to Lian Guangzhu in terms of status. Lian Guangzhu's status was only below the current Rain Emperor in Rain Country, and was able to stand on even ground with the clan heads of the 8 great clans. Commanding Lian Guangzhu? The others could not help but gather a layer of cold sweat on their bodies. Headmaster, the eldest imperial prince interrupted, looking at Lian Guangzhu. Lian Guangzhu sighed, and said, please do not interfere in this matter, eldest imperial prince. What? When they heard his words, did that mean the Lian Guangzhu was going to obey Feng Yan's command? Hung, old man Lian, if it was me who wanted to interfere, are you planning to stop me too? Wu Songlin appeared, looking coldly at Lian Guangzhu. Hiss, here comes another big boss, everyone thought. Chapter 179, Olive Branch. Old man Wu, don't interfere with this matter. Lian Guangzhu waved his hand. I do not want to spoil our many years of friendship. Nonsense. Wu Songlin instantly rebuked. This brat has, after all, dealt someone a crippling injury, so he must definitely be punished according to the academy regulations. Lian Guangzhu's attitude also became unyielding. Wasn't it just crippling a piece of trash? Wu Songlin dismissed lightly. Master Wu, please speak cautiously. Feng Yan interrupted, actually carrying a hint of threat in his tone. Who do you think you are that you dare to reprimand me? Wu Songlin humphed, his right hand flashing out in a strike towards Feng Yan. He was an elite of spiritual pedestal tier, so though this strike was only a very casual move, it held within it unbelievable power. Origin power transformed into a gigantic hand that flew towards Feng Yan. Pang! Lian Guangzhu moved in the nick of time, and managed to disperse the power behind Wu Songlin's blow. He frowned, and said, Old man Wu, are you intending to go against me? As long as you don't touch him, I naturally would not bother to fight you either. Wu Songlin took one step back. Lian Guangzhu stared at Wu Songlin, and Wu Songlin also stared at him. Two old men, whose ages added together came up to a total of over 150 years, were thus stuck in a glaring contest with each other. All right, old man Wu, I'll give you face this time. Lian Guangzhu nodded. Headmaster. Feng Yan spoke up, displeased. Hung, bring your brother with you, let's go and see if we can still manage to reattach his arms. Lian Guangzhu frowned in slight impatience. Feng Yan did not dare to say anything else. He simply picked up Feng Luo and followed at the heels of Lian Guangzhu. One pair of the 4 great guardian deities each carried one of Feng Luo's arms, and the party left together. A chaotic conflict thus ended in this manner. Wu Songlin gave Ling Han a light nod, and left directly. There were too many people here, so he did not want to reveal the relationship between himself and Ling Han. He only wanted to let them know that Ling Han was under his protection, and that was enough. "Brother Ling, if you do not mind, why not join me for a cup of tea?" the eldest imperial prince said to Ling Han, smiling. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Many thanks for your help just now, your Imperial Highness. This Ling Han is extremely grateful. Please. Please." The two of them left together, and when he passed by Li Hao and Zhu Shui, Ling Han said, "The two of you go to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion and seek out Yuan Chu. Just tell him that it was I who told the two of you to go, and stay at his place for a while." "Thank you, Big Brother Ling," Li Hao and Zhu Shui said, filled with gratitude. Ling Han nodded. The reason why the two of them had been targeted by Feng Luo was because of him after all, so he would definitely not just stand by and watch as they continue to be victimized. The eldest imperial prince brought Ling Han with him to a tea shop and requested for an elegant room. The middle-aged man naturally stood guard outside the door, and only Ling Han and the eldest imperial prince were seated inside. "I heard that Brother Ling is very friendly with various grandmaster alchemists, and from what I witnessed today, that is indeed the case," the eldest imperial prince said. His eyes were slightly guarded, and there was also a sliver of heat in his gaze. Ling Han knew very well that the third imperial prince had, thanks to him, welcomed quite a few of previously hesitating neutral parties into his camp. As a result, the eldest imperial prince could naturally not stay composed in the face of this, and similarly extended an olive branch towards him. Before this, alchemists would never interfere in the competition for the throne as they stood completely above it. However, with Ling Han's appearance, many different unpredictable variables were all of a sudden added into the balance. If any imperial prince managed to gain Ling Han's support, that would be equivalent to gaining the support of the alchemists of Rain Country. This was an incomparably terrifying power, and even if the current Rain Emperor wanted to pass on his throne, he would have to consider things carefully. After all, this could possibly disturb the roots of the empire. Thus, the eldest imperial prince also hoped to maintain a good relationship with Ling Han. Additionally, Wu Songlin's previous attitude also reaffirmed this idea in his mind. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Does the eldest imperial prince know what means that Feng Yan has obtained that even Headmaster Lien would be so partial towards him?" The eldest imperial prince frowned, and revealed a furious expression. He could not help but smack a hand on the table, and said, "That traitor." He might not hate Feng Yan so much, but it was obvious that Feng Yan and Ling Han were deadly foes. Thus, he naturally would not mind presenting a slightly exaggerated front in order to form a closer relationship with Ling Han. This man has a special physical constitution, and is also very powerful in battle. However, if it was just that, he could only at most obtain Lian Guanzu's recognition, but would definitely not be able to command the latter. But from the looks of Feng Yan's attitude, though he looks respectful on the surface, in truth, it seems as if he is Lian Guangzu's superior. "This is indeed strange," Ling Han murmured. The eldest imperial prince sank into a pensive state as well. What power had Feng Yan obtained that could actually cause an elite of spiritual pedestal tiara highly revered old headmaster at Thado practically obey his commands? As the eldest imperial prince of Rain Country, he actually had no idea about any of this, and this caused a kind of unease to rise up in him. "I will begin investigating this matter," the eldest imperial prince said, then looked towards Ling Han and continued with a serious expression, "Brother Ling is a smart man, so I will not beat around the bush and waste time. What do you want to say, Your Imperial Highness?" Ling Han said with a slight smile, though he already knew why the eldest imperial prince had paid him this visit. "I would like to ask you to assist me to ascend to the throne," the eldest imperial prince said. Suddenly, the aura of a ruler exuded from him, and his eyes shone with a powerful light. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "What ability do I have that I could actually help your Imperial Highness ascend to the throne?" "Ha ha ha, Brother Ling, you are being too modest. The eldest imperial prince laughed loudly before he suddenly changed the topic. If I successfully ascend to the throne, the Ling clan would be a loyal subject that has performed an outstanding service for me. I would be able to name you a king. King! If these words were heard by the members of the court, they would definitely be shocked numb by the weight of this promise. In the history of Rain Country, there had never been anyone who had rendered such outstanding service that they would be named as a king, even if they were not members of the Qi family. For royal subjects, this could be considered as the highest honor they could attain in their lifetimes. As a result, the eldest imperial prince's face was filled with expectation. He believed that Ling Han would immediately agree. However, he was very quickly disappointed, as there was no hint of change in Ling Han's expression at all. His eyes were clear and deep, as if great imperial power was only a fleeting scene in his eyes. Ling Han slowly opened his mouth, and said, "I do not have any bit of interest in power." In his last life, he had been one of the strongest existences in this world after all, what more when he had also been the Alchemy Emperor. How could a mere mortal emperor compare to the power he had in his grasp at the time? In this lifetime, he only had one target, and that was to become a grandmaster of martial arts, shatter the void, break through his mortal chains and become a god. The eldest imperial prince was actually a very good speaker, but now he suddenly felt a kind of awkwardness that came from not knowing how to continue the conversation. This was because he had already revealed his best trump card, yet Ling Han did not even spare him any consideration. Could it be that he had to yield the imperial throne itself to Ling Han? That has got to be a joke. He considered for a moment, and said, "Brother Ling, if I manage to ascend to the throne, I will allow you to have the chance to break through to Flower Blossoming Tear." Ling Han could not help but put on a strange expression, casting a look at the eldest imperial prince. In Rain Country, due to the restrictions placed on martial arts and cultivation techniques, no matter how highly talented one was, they would still be unable to break through to Flower Blossoming Tear. Thus, this oath of the eldest imperial prince could be considered to be unbelievably shocking. Even the elders of the 8 great clans would most likely be moved by this promise. However, for Ling Han, what was so difficult about breaking through to Flower Blossoming Tear? He was an elite of Heaven Tier in his last life. Though I am not sure about the exact details, but it should have some relation with power of the nation, right? Ling Han was indeed quite curious, and asked the eldest imperial prince with a raised brow. The eldest imperial prince was instantly struck dumb. Chapter 180, Eye of Truth. The power of the nation could help an elite of spiritual pedestal tier break through to Flower Blossoming Tier. Such a huge secret was only discovered by the eldest imperial prince under the most coincidental of circumstances. Moreover, this was not the actual Flower Blossoming Tier, as it required the continuous installation of power of the nation to allow one to maintain his cultivation of Flower Blossoming Tier. Otherwise, one would very quickly once again fall back to the mortal plane. It was precisely because of this that there existed only a single elite warrior of Flower Blossoming Tier in the whole of Rain Country. When the eldest imperial prince set out this condition, he was actually being a little untruthful. When he ascended the throne, he would definitely stimulate the power of the nation for Ling Han's use, but the length of the period that Ling Han could access it. That was a different story. After all, by that time, he would be the new Rain Emperor, and have gained control over the entire empire and immeasurable power. Who would dare go against him, or object to his actions? He had never thought that Ling Han seemed to have a deeper understanding of the power of the nation than even him, and Ling Han obviously did not place much importance on it either. He could not help but be flabbergasted. Women, wealth, and power, all of these were unwanted. He could still understand that, but that even the possibility of breaking through to Flower Blossoming Tier could be set aside so easily as if it was something common. He was really at a loss by now. Such a man seemed to have completely no wants or desires, and as the saying went, a man without wants could stay firm in his resolution. What else could he offer that would successfully attract Ling Han to support him? Ling Han smiled and said, "In truth, I am only friends with the third imperial prince, and have never become his subordinate. I can also become friends with your imperial highness. I have no desire for power, and have no intention to interfere in a struggle for power either." The eldest imperial prince finally looked better at this. He frowned slightly, considered for a while, then spoke, "Does young Master Han have any interest in mystical power?" Previously, he had already taken Ling Han to be a profligate spoilt young master who had somehow managed to obtain the favor of a considerable number of alchemists just like Feng Yan, who had some kind of unknown background. As a result, though he still placed a lot of importance on maintaining an amiable relation with Ling Han, it was a different story whether he truly respected Ling Han or not in his heart. However, through this conversation with Ling Han, he did not dare underestimate this young man who was only 16 or 17 years old any longer, and unconsciously began to use a respectful address for Ling Han. Ling Han was surprised, and asked, "Mystical power?" "That's right, mystical power." The eldest imperial prince nodded, and began to explain, "Mystical powers are extremely unique. Some mystical powers could wound your enemies and possess formidable power. Some mystical powers could only assist and support you in battle. Some claim them to be a kind of martial arts technique, yet they will not expend your origin power. However, every kind of mystical power is extremely precious, and could never be obtained even with a large amount of wealth." Ling Han naturally knew what mystical powers were. These techniques were extremely rare, even he in his last life had not witnessed the use of mystical powers too many times. However, from the few times that he had seen them in action, they had left behind a very powerful impression on his memory. When he ventured deep into various historical sites, he encountered a kind of special physical constitution that could use a mystical power that could swallow the heavens and devour the earth. The user was obviously only in deity transformation tier, yet still managed to swallow him into his stomach, and he was almost digested. Though the holder of this special physical institution was later eliminated by Ling Han, if he was to be honest, then if both of them were at the same cultivation level, even if Ling Han was in the 9th layer and his opponent was merely in the first, the conclusion of their battle could possibly be completely different. Unfortunately, he had not managed to pry the origins of this mystical power from the mouth of that enemy of his. Ling Han's interest was stirred, and he asked, "From the words of your Imperial Highness, you apparently possess a mystical power then?" "I do not, but the National Treasury does," the eldest Imperial Prince said with a serious expression. "As long as young Master Han helps me ascend to the throne, I will definitely hand over this mystical power over to you." Ling Han shook his head, and said, "Your Imperial Highness is not being very sincere. If you can manage to bring this mystical power and show it to me within these few days, I can consider your offer. The mystical power is much too precious, and is locked within the inner chambers. Even I am unable to enter within, so how am I supposed to bring it out for you?" the eldest Imperial Prince said with a little frustration. Ling Han had obtained a useful piece of information, and that was that the National Treasury had an inner chamber within. He laughed, and said, "Then what is the effect of this mystical power? Your Imperial Highness should at least know this, right?" "Eye of Truth," the eldest Imperial Prince said, looking a bit guilty. He had never cultivated this mystical power before, but knew that the Eye of Truth would not increase one's battle prowess in any way, and could only help one to see through false illusions. In his opinion, what use was there for this ability? Thus, he was naturally a bit guilty. But no matter how lousy a mystical power it was still a mystical power. That was why he dared to offer it to tempt Ling Han to support him. Ling Han was stunned for a moment before ecstasy rose up in his heart. The Eye of Truth indeed did not possess any ability to damage or harm one's opponent. However, it was even more precious than a lot of other mystical powers that had ability to attack, because it would allow one to see through all kinds of false illusions and see the real truth. In a simpler example, after cultivating the Eye of Truth, he need not fear any kinds of illusionary arts nor deceptions. And what was even more terrifying was the fact that the eye of truth would allow him to see the weaknesses of both himself and his opponent. Being able to see the weaknesses of others would allow him to maximize his attacks to the full extent, while being able to see his own weaknesses would allow him to improve upon them. Even if there was no way he could improve his weaknesses, he would still be able to protect these weak points of his better. Ling Han did not know whether there was any even stronger ability to this mystical power or not. After all, he had only heard of this kind of mystical power and had never seen it before in his last life. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that, in this tiny little rain country, there would actually be hidden such a powerful mystical power? Ling Han thought for a moment. He had indeed discovered a considerable number of precious treasures in Rain Country, such as the remains of an ultimate warrior of shattering void tier. Perhaps when so many elites and ultimate warriors had gathered all those years ago, there had been a few that had only suffered heavy injuries but had not died. After the battle, they stayed in Rain Country, and left behind such a powerful mystical power like the Eye of Truth. Ling Han was moved in his heart, but there was no hint of change in his expression. How could he so easily wear his heart on his sleeve after 2 whole lifetimes won? He asked, "Your Imperial Highness does not seem to have cultivated this mystical power? Otherwise, he may not take it out as a bargaining chip." The eldest Imperial Prince shook his head and said, "The Eye of Truth has a very special condition for inheritance. It is hidden in an eyeball, and one must somehow gain its acceptance and acknowledgement before it would directly enter into one's consciousness. Otherwise, it is only a piece of scrap." Ling Han gave an "oh" at this. No wonder he had not managed to find the mystical power, swallow the heavens and devour the earth. So this kind of inheritance was completely different from cultivation techniques and martial arts, and was not depicted in mere words or pictures. Intriguing. He smiled and said, "When your Imperial Highness can bring that eyeball to me, we can continue to discuss our cooperation. But, as for now, let's just be friends, all right?" The eldest Imperial Prince knew very well that empty promises would not be able to move Ling Han. Whatever he could promise, so could the third Imperial Prince, which meant he had no advantage over the latter. However, he had at least managed to befriend Ling Han, so other matters could be advanced slowly. "Young Master Han, there will be an auction at the Spirit Treasures Pavilion the day after tomorrow, and it is rumored that there will even be an incomparably precious foundation building pill up for auction. Are you interested to go take a look?" the eldest Imperial Prince earnestly inquired him. Ling Han could not help but put on a strange expression. This foundation building pill was naturally his, but he had never thought that it would actually become the most precious of auction items. He was just about to shake his head in refusal, but then reconsidered. Rain Country's overall level was too low. Who knows if there may be some treasures that may not be recognized for their worth. "I don't mind going for a look." He changed his mind. "Ha ha ha, then I shall come receive you personally the day after tomorrow." The eldest Imperial Prince was very satisfied. If he appeared in public with Ling Han, then that would definitely create an image that he had a very close relationship with Ling Han. By that time, those middle-class clans would have to reconsider their decisions. Ling Han nodded and took his leave. He still had to go and visit Li Hao and Zhu Shui. Chapter 181, Promise. He was not sure if the eldest Imperial Prince would be able to find the secret Feng Yen was hiding, but based on his estimation, odds were low. That was because the third Imperial Prince had already taken action a few days ago, yet because of the appearance and interference of Lian Guangzhu, the Imperial Guards the third Imperial Prince had sent were easily chased out of the academy. After such an incident, the third Imperial Prince would definitely have begun his own investigation on Feng Yen. If the third Imperial Prince had discovered anything, then he would definitely have come to inform Ling Han. Unfortunately, there was no news at all from the third Imperial Prince even by now, so it was evident that he had not managed to find anything out. When Ling Han arrived at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, Ling Han first comforted Li Hao and Zhu Shuiyi. For the moment, Li Hao would definitely be unable to return to the academy, but for Li Hao, this was definitely a blessing in disguise. What kind of place was the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion? A place that sold medicines. There may be nothing else here, but if one were talking about alchemical pills, perhaps at least about 1/3 of the supply of alchemical pills in the whole of Rain Country could be found here. And if you were talking about high-grade alchemical pills, then these pills were basically all distributed from this place to other parts of Rain Country. Ling Han now took Li Hao as a real friend, so he naturally would request Yuan Chu to provide an unlimited supply of alchemical pills for Li Hao, while he himself would also guide Li Hao a bit on his path of cultivation. Just think, he had both an endless supply of alchemical pills, as well as someone who used to be an elite of heaven tier to guide him in his cultivation. If Li Hao's prowess was still unable to improve drastically, then he really should find a piece of tofu and knock himself to death. Li Hao and Zhu Shuiyi naturally understood this logic, so they could not help becoming even more grateful towards Ling Han. They both secretly decided that they would definitely do something for Ling Han in the future to repay him. After leaving Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, Ling Han had yet to return to the academy when he was stopped midway and invited over by the third Imperial Prince. Brother Ling. The third Imperial Prince was still exuding his signature dominating aura, though there was an added sliver of concern on his face. I heard that my eldest brother went to see you today. Since your Imperial Highness is already aware, then why do you need to ask a question that you already know the answer to? Ling Han said directly. He was not the slightest bit interested in the competition between these two brothers, and did not have the slightest intention to get himself involved in such a troublesome issue. He. The third Imperial Prince laughed. I trust that Brother Ling would not be so easily moved by my eldest brother's flowery words. Ling Han could not help but smile, and said, that may not be. He recited the conditions that the eldest Imperial Prince had set out, and the expression on the third Imperial Prince's face constantly changed as he heard Ling Han's words, secretly thinking that the eldest Imperial Prince was indeed ruthless that he would even dare promise to name Ling Han as a king and assist him to break through to flower blossoming tier. One had to understand that even if the current Rain Emperor wanted to name someone not of the Qi family as a king, he would still encounter much objection from the members of the imperial court. There were too many high stakes involved in this matter, and it was definitely not something so simple that merely granting a title would be able to resolve it. If one were to be named king, then he should definitely have a piece of land to build his own kingdom. However, Rain Country had already been established for a few thousand years, and all the land under the administration of the empire had already long been divided amongst the nobility, so where would Ling Han's land come from? Unless Ling Han were to lead the army out to war and occupy the land belonging to the neighboring nations? And using the power of the nation to help Ling Han break through to flower blossoming tier was even more nonsense. If it was as easy as that, then why was there only a single person in flower blossoming tier in the whole of Rain Country? I know that Brother Ling is extremely loyal, and would definitely not betray me. The third Imperial Prince laughed loudly, seeming to be very happy. However, Ling Han noticed the dark tone underlining his laughter. In a struggle for the throne, who would not be cold-blooded and cruel? Even blood and flesh brothers would be able to stab each other. Ling Han laughed, and said, that may not be. If there was enough benefit in the game, then anything can be discussed. Pooh! The third Imperial Prince instantly choked, feeling as if someone had delivered a punch to his face. His expression was indescribably awkward. His face twitched and he forced out a smile, and said, Brother Ling is indeed a good joker. Ling Han shook his head and said, I am not joking here. For example, if I were able to cultivate the Eye of Truth, then I will definitely become good friends with your Imperial Highness. Eye of Truth. The expression on the third Imperial Prince's face changed drastically, and he finally understood that the eldest imperial prince had revealed the existence of this precious treasure to Ling Han. However, when compared with naming him as a king, or using power of the nation to help him break through to flower-blossoming tier, this mystical power was a much smaller bargaining chip. If it was not the fact that it was locked within the inner chamber, he would not mind taking it out and handing it over to Ling Han. After all, it was only a support-type mystical power, and after so many years, there was no one who had been able to obtain the inheritance from within, so he believed that Ling Han would not be an exception either. Trading a practically useless item for a powerful support. How could a genius like the third imperial prince not want to make such a profitable bargain? But the problem was that he indeed did not have the right to enter into the inner chamber. Hold on. The third imperial prince tapped his finger, and said, after another 2 months, it would be my imperial father's 60th birthday and the whole nation would be in celebration. At that time, my imperial father would definitely host a grand banquet for the guests, and draw out some treasures from the national treasury for everyone to admire, so there would be a chance to enter into the national treasury. However, the lock to the inner chamber is the heaven and earth united lock, and unless one has the key, there is no way that it can be unlocked. AI. However, Ling Han's eyes lit up at this. He had the blood-sucking origin gold in his possession which could change shape following his will and would be able to open any lock on this world, so this was nothing difficult for him. He said, then I really would like to enter into the national treasury for a look. The third imperial prince was a smart man, so he immediately looked at Ling Han in shock and said, Brother Ling has a way to unlock the heaven and earth united lock? I learned a few tricks of lock-picking. Ling Han would naturally not reveal the existence of the blood-sucking origin gold, so he simply used an excuse for cover. The third imperial prince considered for a moment, then said, all right, when I manage to win over the position to organize this event, I will bring Brother Ling into the national treasury. However, Brother Ling, let me say this first. There are a lot of extremely valuable treasures in the inner chamber, and they are extremely important, so you must definitely not take any of them. Otherwise, not just you, but even I will have to suffer the consequences. Don't worry. I am not interested in any other items, Ling Han said with a smile. The third imperial prince could not help but roll his eyes at this. He naturally would not believe Ling Han's words, but for the sake of obtaining Ling Han's support, he could not worry about these things. Moreover, he would be standing at one side to observe then, so he would definitely not let Ling Han do as he liked. There were risks, but the risk level was under control. Then I shall take my leave first, and quietly wait for good news from your Imperial Highness, Ling Han said, smiling. Brother Ling, please. The third imperial prince nodded. Ling Han cast a look at Zi Yan. The girl seemed to have changed into a completely different person and had become reticent with a colder attitude. He did not pay too much attention to this though. It was none of his business, after all. When he returned to his own courtyard in the academy, he saw that Lu Yutong and Li Si Chan were both there. Both of them had come to express their concerns. Afterwards, Master purposely went to visit Master Lien, but Master Lien said he had his own difficulties. He would unconditionally support whatever Feng Yan decided to do, Li Si Chan said. Lu Yutong said, I used the power of my clan to investigate Feng Yan, but I was not able to find out anything. Just like you, he seems to have suddenly become powerful overnight. Ling Han revealed a pensive expression. So Lien Guangzhu had actually said that he would unconditionally support whatever Feng Yan decided to do. That was a shocking promise. And the bigger the power in Feng Yan's hands, the more disadvantageous things would be for Ling Han. Of course, he himself had the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion as well as the Alchemy Department behind him, and these two parties were definitely not beneath the Martial Arts Department in terms of power. If it really came to a full-on clash, then it would definitely draw the imperial family of Rain Country, as well as the 8 great clans, into this conflict. The Rain Emperor would definitely not allow this kind of internal conflict to ensue. It was strange. He was able to subdue Fu Yuansheng, Wu Songlin and the other alchemists because of his alchemy ability from his last life, but it most likely was not to the level that they would obey his every command. Feng Yen had risen up so suddenly and in such a strange manner. The imperial family of Rain Country must have done their own investigation on him. If even the power of a whole nation is unable to find anything out, then you should not waste your time worrying about this matter, Ling Han said to Lu Yutong. Don't forget yourself. Li Si-chan pointed out. Isn't your rising very sudden and strange as well? Chapter 182, Reflection. Ling Han was stunned for a moment before breaking out in laughter. That's right. He forgot about himself. He had been the alchemy emperor in his last life, so he naturally took the way that all alchemists respected him and held him in great reverence to be something very normal. However, he had forgotten that he was only 17 years old now. In the eyes of the politically powerful, he was also an unstable variable and an existence that could affect the stability of the reign of the Qi family, and if things came to a head, he could even be easily eliminated. If they knew that I was the one who had concocted the 9 foundation building pills, they would be even more astonished, wouldn't they? Ling Han murmured to himself as he supported his chin with one hand. The foundation building pills were divine medicine that could really affect the current delicate power balance in Rain Country, and if there appeared another 10+ spiritual pedestal tier elites, then things would definitely become a complete mess. That was because the cake was only so big, and if there was someone new added to the mix who wanted to get his own share, then that would definitely mean that those who already had their own share would have to let go of a portion of their own share for the newcomer. Who would want to let go of what they already had in their possession? I did not think things through far enough, it seems. Ling Han reflected on his life since the moment that he had been reborn. It was still fine in Grey Cloud Town and the Yuan City, but after entering into the Imperial City, it seems that he had been a bit too brash. But so what if I am a bit brash? With the identity of a black-grade high-level alchemist, not even the Rain Emperor would easily take action against me. Ling Han tapped his fingers in thought, as light flashed in his eyes. However, the issue about obtaining the Eye of Truth would have to be reconsidered. Though I have never seen the Rain Emperor before, it is rumored that this emperor is extremely intelligent and very capable at maintaining control. Those 2 sons of his keep planning and scheming here and there right in this imperial city, how could he not notice at all? Who knows, there may be Rain Emperor spies planted right at the side of those 2 imperial princes. If, at the moment I open up the inner chamber and retrieve the Eye of Truth, and was so, coincidentally, caught red-handed, then even the status of an alchemist would not be able to protect me. My only fate would be being executed for my crime. Otherwise, would be imprisoned for life to keep concocting alchemical pills for the Qi family for the rest of my days. A sliver of a smile flickered at the corners of Ling Han's lips, and he thought, I was too strong and powerful in my last life, so no one dared to use underhanded schemes against me. However, after my rebirth, I have been a bit careless. Who knows, I may meet with unexpected failure in what seems to be something very easy for me. My priority now should be breaking through to Gushing Spring Tier, and discovering the real secrets of the Black Tower. This is the most precious of all treasures in this world. I can't pick up the sesame seed and instead lose sight of the watermelon. When they saw his thoughts stray, both Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan asked at the same time, "What are you thinking about?" Right after their words fell, they both glared at each other. Why did she say the same thing as me again? How hateful. It's nothing. I just broke through, so I need to stabilize my cultivation first, Ling Han said, smiling. 9th layer of element gathering tier. Lu Yutong suddenly screamed. What? Li Si-chan was also shocked, because Ling Han was very obviously still in the 7th layer of element gathering tier just the day before. He actually managed to break through 2 cultivation layers in a single day. Could he be even more outrageous than that? It's nothing to make a fuss about. Ling Han smiled calmly. In his last life, he had reached the formidable height of Heaven Tier, so how could such a small breakthrough in Element Gathering Tier cause him to feel ecstatic about? What a poser. Both girls gave him a look of disdain. When did I pose? Ling Han felt very wronged, but he did not want to bother himself to argue with the two girls, and instead continued to ponder over his sword arts as he wanted to form the seventh flash of sword chi. Once he managed to form the seventh flash of sword chi, his battle prowess would be able to rise to another level. More importantly, that would mean that he was one more step closer to Sword Ray. The conflict between Feng Yan and Ling Han caused huge waves at the academy, because even the two headmasters appeared at the end of the conflict. Ling Han was still fine because Wu Songlin did not say much. That was why the majority thought that he had just coincidentally passed by and decided to uphold the justice. Feng Yan was a different story. The theory about him being Lian Guangzu's illegitimate son gave rise to a tremendous clamor, and the majority thought that was practically confirmed. Of course, there were still some who managed to look deeper into things. Lian Guangzu's attitude towards Feng Yan was not as if the latter was his illegitimate son, but rather more like a relationship between an old servant and his young master. However, this old servant had a very firm backbone, and the young master was still too weak. Thus, the relationship was not very distinct yet. Whatever the case was, Feng Yan had already become a very popular and mighty figure in the eyes of the academy. However, the fact that his younger brother had his arms sliced off by Ling Han, and he still was unable to do anything to Ling Han in vengeance, was still a hit to his image. Feng Yan had already announced that Ling Han was his foe, and he would definitely kill Ling Han within 3 months. If anyone dared to befriend Ling Han, then they would not be able to escape a similar fate. After these words were announced, the whole academy was in an uproar as they all thought that Feng Yan was much too arrogant. Putting aside the possibility that Feng Yan may be Lian Guangzu's illegitimate son, even if he was Lian Guangzu's old man, he still did not have the right to rage so publicly in the imperial city and announce his intention to commit murder. After all, this was the land of the Qi family, and not the Lian clan. Unexpectedly, the imperial family did not display any reaction about this matter. No one knew if they were only pretending that they had not heard of any such thing, or thought that Feng Yan was too young and so decided not to call him to account for the sake of Lian Guangzu. However, the new auction of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was right around the corner. Because there were 9 foundation building pills up for auction this time around, this caused incredible excitement to rise up among the great clans and the other middle-class clans. Even the imperial family would not be able to maintain their composure. After all, there was only one person in Flower Blossoming Tier in the whole of Rain Country, and he had not appeared for many years, so it was unknown whether he was still alive or already dead. In Rain Country, the spiritual pedestal tier was doubtlessly the strongest cultivation tier, and those in this cultivation level would be able to do as they liked and practically disregard the laws of the empire. These people were really the elite of the elite. The foundation building pill could greatly increase the chances of a martial artist to break through to spiritual pedestal tier, so this naturally attracted the excitement of every known party. Who would not want a few more such extremely powerful people to provide additional security for their own power base? In the world of martial artists, everything was gained through power. The middle-class clans wanted to obtain a foundation building pill in order to ascend to the level of a great clan, while the 8 great clans and the imperial family hoped to have a few more elites of spiritual pedestal tier to strengthen the power of their own clans and further secure their own position in the power balance. This was destined to be a very fierce competition. Ling Han was completely unbothered. Money was only something he needed to buy more medicinal ingredients and concoct more alchemical pills. Even if he had more of it, it was not of much use to him. When the day of the auction arrived, the eldest imperial prince had indeed arrived very early and earnestly extended an invitation to Ling Han. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were long aware of the auction, and so had naturally come early. Thus, Ling Han would have to bring along the both of them, as well as Hunyo. Ha ha ha, so young Master Han has already plucked the two most beautiful flowers of the imperial city. I was still feeling a bit strange previously about the fact that young Master Han did not have any beauties by his side, especially when you are so outstanding and elegant. The eldest imperial prince laughed loudly, looking as if he had found a kindred spirit. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both blushed, but did not argue. It was unknown whether it was because they were a bit subdued by the eldest imperial prince's power, or had just simply chosen to admit indirectly. Meanwhile, Ling Han rolled his eyes. So this guy had previously thought that he had some kind of problem there, or perhaps thought that he liked men? He laughed and said, Yutong and Si-chan are my good friends. Good friends, I get it. I get it. The eldest imperial prince's smile became even more suggestive. Damn, this guy of impure thoughts. Ling Han changed the topic and asked, does your Imperial Highness also want the foundation building pill? Though I have not yet broken through to spiritual ocean tier, my current cultivation level would at most continue to trouble me for 1 more year, the eldest imperial prince said confidently. If I manage to obtain a foundation building pill, then I would have higher odds when I attempt breaking through to spiritual pedestal tier in the future. Unfortunately, I am limited in my financial resources. Otherwise, I will definitely try to obtain all 9 foundation building pills. That way, my breakthrough to spiritual pedestal tier would be practically definite. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan could not help but look towards Ling Han. This guy very casually produced those 9 foundation building pills. If you manage to cling to him, then that would really ensure that you can successfully break through. Chapter 183, Sun Ziyan. Ling Han laughed and said, a few months ago, I was having lunch at a restaurant and coincidentally encountered a pair of assassins. Moreover, 3 members of the Black Cloud Army even died. The eldest imperial prince was stunned for a second, then asked, young Master Han was also at the scene on that day? Ling Han nodded and said, that woman seems to be a member of the imperial family, right? From the looks of her, she has yet to reach 30 years old, and yet has already stepped into spiritual ocean tier. Her accomplishment is really something awe-inspiring. The face of the eldest imperial prince instantly darkened. He kept his silence for a moment, then said, this woman's name is Su Ku Xian, she had entered the court just a few years ago. My imperial father named her as Consort Yun, and dotes on her very much. Since young Master Han knows that the power of the nation can help one to break through to flower blossoming tier, then you should know that it can also help to speed up one's cultivation rate. However, the power of the nation is still limited, yet my imperial father actually used a large portion of it on a woman. Hung. The last words of the eldest imperial prince were already extremely traitorous as he dared to actually criticize the actions of the current emperor. However, it was also very obvious from his tone that the eldest imperial prince was very displeased with this Su Ku Xian. Ling Han thought back on the naturally seductive appearance of Su Ku Xian, and could not help but think that it was no wonder that even the Rain Emperor would be head over heels over her. She was indeed a captivating beauty. It was evident how much the Emperor doted on her just from the fact that she could leave the palace with the Black Cloud Army as her guards. If she did not have the Emperor's favor, then, as an imperial consort, how could she so casually leave the imperial palace? Does this Consort Yun have any children? Ling Han asked casually. Thankfully, no. The eldest imperial prince shook his head. Otherwise, based on the way the Rain Emperor doted on her, neither himself or the third imperial prince would need to waste their time to compete for the throne. As they conversed, time passed and they had arrived at the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Right when they had just disembarked from their carriage, they saw a young man approach them and say, this Sun Ziyan greets your Imperial Highness. Sun Ziyan? A thought flashed through Ling Han's head. He turned to look at this young man. The latter was average in terms of looks and was quite tall and slender. He should have just stepped into gushing spring tear as his aura was still not very stable. Spare the niceties, Ziyan. The eldest imperial prince raised his hand slightly, naturally exuding the aura of a ruler. The most powerful and greatest clan in Rain Country was naturally the Qi family, which held control over the political court and had power that spread to all corners of their empire. However, the Sun clan was only slightly beneath the Qi family in status, so Sun Ziyan was not really afraid of the eldest imperial prince. After paying his greetings, he turned to look at Ling Han and said, "Brother Ling, we have finally met." Looks like Sun Ziyan was deliberately waiting for him here. "Sun Ziyan, what do you want?" Lu Yutong asked coldly. As a good female attendant, she naturally had to stand at the front lines. A stunned and envious expression appeared on Sun Ziyan's face. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were known as the twin pearls of the imperial city, and the number of men that were interested in them was enough to surround the whole imperial city a few times. He himself was also one of the admirers. Unfortunately, it seemed as if these two beautiful flowers were actually plucked by the same man. This was really something that would attract envy, jealousy, and hatred. If Ling Han had any idea of his current thoughts, he would definitely scream out loudly that he was innocent. The gods know that he really hadn't done anything. He was as pure as a little white flower. Sun Ziyan smiled and said, "I only wanted to settle a little conflict between myself and Brother Ling." "Oh, there is such an issue," the eldest imperial prince interrupted. "It's just a little misunderstanding," Sun Ziyan said in an understatement. "Oh?" Ling Han's eyes turned cold. "Are you talking about how that father-in-law of yours coveted my two little sisters, and when he did not succeed in tricking and kidnapping them, he sent people to snatch them from me? So that was a misunderstanding, tisk. Fury flashed through Sun Ziyan's face, but he forced it down and said, "Brother Ling, aren't those two little sisters of yours unscathed and completely unharmed? I am here to represent my father-in-law to offer up an apology, and will also deliver a gift as thanks for accepting our apology, so please forget about this matter, Brother Ling, and not continue doing something that will only damage both sides." The eldest imperial prince nodded, and said with a smile, "Since Ziyan is so sincere, why won't Brother Ling give me some face and forgive Ziyan and forget the whole matter?" Lu Yutong looked on with a little worry. She knew Ling Han's personality very well and feared that Ling Han would come into a direct conflict with the eldest imperial prince. Ling Han laughed loudly. When Sun Ziyan and the eldest imperial prince saw this, they both laughed as well, thinking that the misunderstanding was settled. "No." Right at this moment, Ling Han suddenly declared. "Cough. Cough." Both the eldest imperial prince and Sun Ziyan did not manage to get their breath back and broke out into coughs. Their faces were darkened as they looked at Ling Han. "Since you are not agreeing to resolving things peacefully, then why were you laughing so happily?" "Brother Ling, I am being very sincere here." Sun Ziyan's tone deepened considerably as well, a hint of threat underlining his words. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "I am also very sincerely telling you that there is no way that this matter will be resolved peacefully. That old father-in-law of yours is a complete scum, and continuing to allow him to live in this world would only be a waste of food. Brother Ling, are you intending to declare war with the Sun clan with this?" Sun Ziyan asked darkly. "He, Ziyan, you are being too harsh in your words, aren't you?" The eldest imperial prince stepped out as mediator. He did not want to first form an enmity with the Sun clan when he had yet to obtain the support that would come with an amiable relationship with Ling Han. Ling Han smiled and asked, "Sun Ziyan, can you really represent the Sun clan? You dare to insult me?" Sun Ziyan glared at him. This guy must have been deliberate, pausing while saying his name in such a way that Sun Zi came first, then followed by Yen. Isn't Sun Zi Yen your name? So does that mean calling your name is equivalent to insulting you? What a weird fellow. Ling Han shook his head. It would be all right if you call my name in a normal way, but the way you called my name just now must have been deliberate. Sun Zi Yen declared harshly. Ling Han revealed a very innocent expression, and asked, "How did I call you just now, again?" Sun Zi Yen. Sun Zi Yen did not suspect anything and repeated his name the way Ling Han had called his name just now. But just after the words left his mouth, he finally realized his blunder and flew into a great rage as he shouted, "Ling Han, you dare to trick me? With an intelligence level like yours, AI?" Ling Han shook his head. "You really only deserve to be a grandson. You're looking for death." Sun Zi Yen was furious and aimed a harsh punch towards Ling Han. Ting! Lu Yutong stepped out and blocked Sun Zi Yan's fist with the hilt of her sword. She said coldly, "Sun Zi Yen, don't force me to draw my sword." Sun Zi Yen took one step back and looked at Lu Yutong with caution. He was not able to detect her real cultivation level, which made it evident that she had superior cultivation to his. Needed to be extremely cautious when facing her. Both of you are important subjects of our nation, so please avoid coming into conflict," the eldest imperial prince interrupted, standing between the two of them. The two of them were both members of the 8 great clans. It was all right if it was just a spar, but if there was any loss of life, then even an imperial prince like himself would have to bear the blame. At such an important time in the battle for the throne, even the slightest mistake could cause him to lose all hope of his dreams of inheriting the throne. "When you return, let Qin Yunxiang clean his neck properly, as I will personally send him to the executioner's block," Ling Han said calmly, but there was an extremely determined tone underlining his words. Sun Zi Yen regained his composure, and asked, "Ling Han, must you do something that will hurt both sides?" "What do you mean by hurting both sides?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Since that is so, then don't blame me for taking action." Sun Zi Yen said coldly. "Let me give you a piece of helpful advice. You should be more careful with those stores of yours. The imperial city is too big, so it is unavoidable that some rogues would come to make trouble." Ling Han sighed, and said, "Then I would have to eliminate another clan then." His words were spoken very lightly, but the eldest imperial prince had still vaguely heard them and his expression instantly changed. Chapter 184, Please go up to the 3rd floor. Eliminate another clan? The Sun clan? The eldest imperial prince could not help but turn to look at Ling Han. Though he looked very highly upon Ling Han, not even all the alchemists of Rain Country standing behind Ling Han would be able to eliminate the Sun clan. That was because the 8 great clans were the pillars of support of the nation, and if things really proceeded to that step, then not only would the Rain Emperor take action, even the elder of the Qi family that usually stood behind the scenes would spring out into the open. But from the extremely calm and composed, practically cold look on Ling Han's face, this did not seem like words of anger he had said simply in the heat of the moment. The hidden depths within his eyes even caused an icy feeling to rise up in the heart of the eldest imperial prince. How could that be? He was in the 9th layer of gushing spring tier and had 1 foot into the door of spiritual ocean tier. Moreover, he was the eldest imperial prince of the empire, yet he would actually feel a bit of fear just from looking at the eyes of a young man. I hope you will not be so foolish." Sun Zi Yen did not hear Ling Han's murmur. The flick of his sleeves was proof enough of his extreme displeasure. That was natural. He had thought that he only needed to step out as a mediator and the conflict between Ling Han and Qin Yunxiang would be resolved with a few words from him. He had not thought that Ling Han would not give him the slightest bit of face. The eldest imperial prince did not speak any more words of advice. Ling Han's words previously were obviously spoken just loud enough for him to be able to hear. If he continued to advise Ling Han, would Ling Han speak even more shocking words, and declare his intention to eliminate another clan? Then that would really be considered treason. Sun Ziyan turned and left. When he arrived at the entrance to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, an old man came up to receive him and said, "Ziyan, what did that brat say?" It was Chen Yunxiang. A sliver of displeasure flickered across Sun Ziyan's face. Though he did not care about the lives of a few commoners, he still felt very disgusted with this old man that had that kind of perverted fetish. Still, what could he do? This was his father-in-law, after all. He refused to let it go. He shook his head. Chen Yunxiang was stunned at first before immediately saying angrily, "This brat actually refused to give face even to you, Ziyan, just because he has the protection of the princess of the Lu clan." Sun Ziyan humphed. He naturally knew that Chen Yunxiang was fanning the flames, but he was indeed displeased. Both the eldest and third imperial princes seemed to have quite an amiable relation with this brat. It's not as simple as him depending on a woman. What? Chen Yunxiang instantly broke out into a cold sweat. The Chen clan was only a minor clan, and if he actually attracted the displeasure of such important people like the eldest and third imperial prince, that would mean that the Chen clan could be eliminated at any time. "What are you so afraid of?" Sun Ziyan asked coldly. With Ziyan to protect me, I naturally need and not fear anything," Chen Yunxiang quickly flattered him. Though he was Sun Ziyan's father-in-law, their social status was completely different. Sun Ziyan gave another humph. He turned back around and looked as Ling Han and his group walked up the stairs, an icy smile flickering around the corners of his lips. "Greetings, Your Imperial Highness." The guards standing at the entrance of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion were naturally clever people, so when they saw the eldest imperial prince, they quickly hurried forwards and bowed in greeting. Meanwhile, a minor manager immediately came out to receive them as he said, "With the grand arrival of Your Imperial Highness, young masters and princesses, our pavilion is honored by your appearance. Please. Please." With that minor manager guiding them, they followed him and walked up the staircase. The second and third floors were both comprised of private rooms, but there were only 20 of them available on the third floor. They were reserved for extremely important people such as the current Rain Emperor, the clan heads of the 8 great clans, the 2 headmasters of Huyang Academy as well as the pavilion master of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Any other 7 if it was the eldest and third imperial prince would only be able to settle for a private room on the second floor. Thus, when they arrived on the landing on the second floor, they naturally had to stop climbing the stairs. "Our esteemed guests, your private room awaits you on the third floor," the minor manager said in a strange tone. Everyone's steps paused. Third floor? How could that be possible? If you were talking about the person with the highest status amongst them, then that would definitely be the eldest imperial prince. However, even he did not have the right to go up to the third floor, unless he managed to ascend to the imperial throne and become the ruler of this empire. Young Master Han is the most honored guest of our pavilion, and so naturally has the right to go up to the third floor, the minor manager said, respectfully bowing in Ling Han's direction. What? Everyone was dumbstruck. How could that be? What right did his brat, merely 16 or 17 years old and in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, have to go up to the third floor and be on the same level as the clan heads of the 8 great clans, the 2 headmasters of the academy, the boss of alchemy in Rain Country, or even the Rain Emperor? Ling Han glanced cursorily at the minor manager, and the latter only offered him a good-natured smile. He knew that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, to confirm the origin of the foundation building pills, must have gone to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion and done their own investigation. They would have found out that the pills were concocted by Ling Han. Those were foundation building pills one was talking about here. Their grade was close to Earth grade pills, and this not only implied that Ling Han was already a black-grade high-level alchemist, but that he was practically a confirmed Earth-grade alchemist in the near future. Such a person would still not have the right to go up to the third floor. Thanks to young Master Han, I would be able to go up to the third floor now. The eldest imperial prince laughed loudly, though there was a sliver of confusion and envy, as well as astonishment, in his eyes. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion was a business, so how could they break their own rules? Since they had prepared a private room on the third floor for Ling Han, that meant that Ling Han had power or background that deserved this kind of priority treatment. This was astonishing to him. What right did Ling Han have to be on the same level as the clan heads of the 8 great clans and the boss of alchemy of Rain Country and other such extremely important people? Sun Ziyan's expression instantly darkened. He had previously looked down on Ling Han, and thought that he was so arrogant because a woman backed him, and now, through some unknown means, he had gotten his hooks into the eldest and third imperial prince. But from the looks of the current scenario, it was obvious he was wrong in his estimation. Not even the eldest imperial prince had the right to enjoy a private room on the third floor, what more to actually obtain one for Ling Han. He was surprised, and Chen Yunxiang was even more dumbstruck. He was so scared that his face had completely paled. Secretly, he was already beginning to regret his utter misfortune and that he would actually encounter such a deadly character like Ling Han. When he looked at Ling Han ascend further up the steps, a complicated expression appeared on Sun Ziyan's face. Should he still continue down his path of darkness and continue to go against Ling Han? It was obvious that the latter's background was very likely astonishingly powerful. When he looked at Chen Yunxiang, he could not help but think of his beautiful and seductive concubine. Then his gaze became even more determined. It was already decided that he would interfere in this matter. Not only was it for the sake of that concubine of his, but also for his own pride. He was a young master of the Sun clan, and no one should be able to step on his pride. There were only 20 private rooms on the third floor, but each private room was extremely spacious, with capacity to accommodate a few dozen people. Moreover, there were also beautiful female attendants waiting to serve guests within, earnestly serving dishes and filling their cups. Ling Han and the others all sat down, while Hunyou knelt on Ling Han's lap solemnly, her little figure held firmly and strictly. "Young Master Han, is this your sister?" the eldest imperial prince said with a smile. "Something like that," Ling Han said, smiling. He dotingly rubbed Hunyou's head, and a satisfied expression instantly appeared on the little girl's face. Like a kitten, she rubbed her head against Ling Han's chest. The eldest imperial prince observed Hunyou closely for a moment, and could not hold back an expression of shock. He pointed at Hunyou and said in astonishment, She's actually in element gathering tier. This little girl was only about 5 or 6 years old, but was shockingly already in element gathering tier. This was enough to shock anyone to death. Hunyou glared at the eldest imperial prince in displeasure. Ling Han hated being pointed at by someone, and she was heavily influenced by Ling Han, and so naturally had the same dislike. Her little mouth opened wide, revealing her little white teeth, looking like she was ready to bite someone. "Be good, Nyo," Ling Han said, smiling. Hunyou instantly withdrew her fierce expression, and smiled sweetly at Ling Han. The eldest imperial prince, meanwhile, was stuck in a state of shock and astonishment. How could there be such a young person in element gathering tier? This was too unreal. Indeed, it seems that birds of a feather flock together. Ling Han himself was a monster, so even the people around him were monsters too. Chapter 185, Bidding for the Foundation Building Pill. My thanks to all our esteemed guests. We are honored by your presence. An old man dressed in an embroidered robe walked up to the auctioneer's stage and started tonight's auction. I know very well that there are many here today who have come especially for the foundation building pill. However, There is also a number of other quite good items prepared for the auction today, so I would advise everyone not to dump all your money on simply the foundation building pill. When they heard his words, everyone laughed, and the atmosphere instantly became more relaxed. However, this relaxed state was only temporary. When the foundation building pill appeared, it was guaranteed that all of them would become agitated. One foundation building pill would allow a martial artist who stood at the top of the spiritual ocean tier to build the foundations for his spiritual pedestal and enter a higher cultivation level to become one of the most influential persons in the whole of Rain Country. What person, or what clan, would not go crazy over it? How many spiritual pedestal tier elites were there in the whole of Rain Country? Even for the 8 great clans and the imperial family, they would only have 2 or 3 spiritual pedestal tier elites that were publicly known to oversee things in their clan. Even if there were a few that played the role of the hidden ace and thus not known publicly, if a clan could have 5 such powerful martial artists in their ranks, it was definitely enough to shock everyone to death. According to rumors, there would be 9 foundation building pills on auction today. If they could all be obtained by a single party, then in the best case scenario, they would be able to allow 9 martial artists at the peak of spiritual ocean tier break through to spiritual pedestal tier. What kind of concept was that? In a single instant, this clan would be able to surpass the 8 great clans. Of course, even after taking the foundation building pill, it was not possible that every person who had swallowed it would be able to successfully break through, but if there was a 50% chance, that would mean there would be 4 or 5 who can successfully break through. If there was only 1/3 of a chance, there would also be at least 3. Anyone who would not go crazy over them must be stupid. So what if alchemical pills were exorbitantly expensive? As long as one was able to enter into spiritual pedestal tier, no matter how much they had to pay for such an alchemical pill, they would be able to earn back easily. Everyone laughed loudly, but all of their eyes had a determined gleam to them tonight. Even if they had to lose their entire family fortune, they would definitely get their hands on a foundation building pill. Ling Han felt a hidden current in the air, and could not help but smile. The foundation building pills may be able to go for an astronomical price in the auction tonight. That was all thanks to the fact that there were really too few elites of spiritual pedestal tier in Rain Country. If it was in a place where the field of martial arts was prosperous and booming, and there would be as many so-called elites of spiritual pedestal tier as stray dogs, then how little would foundation building pills be worth? I've never thought that there would be so many people. I was feeling confident at first and thought that, in the worst-case scenario, I had to at least get 1 or, better yet, 2. However, now I'm feeling rather uneasy. The chances don't look very good even for getting only 1. The eldest imperial prince, shaking his head. Ling Han smiled and said, "Your Imperial Highness has yet to step into spiritual ocean tier, and there is at least another 5 years until the time when you would need to attempt breaking through to spiritual pedestal tier. Who knows, there may be new foundation building pills again by then." The eldest imperial prince sighed and said, "Young Master Han may not be aware as you have just arrived in the imperial city. However, at least as far as I can remember, never have alchemical pills that could aid one in breaking through appeared. Setting aside such high-grade alchemical pills like the foundation building pill, even the purple cloud pill which is used to help to break through to gushing spring tier is extremely rare." Ling Han instantly put on a strange expression. The main ingredient of that purple cloud pill was the dark moon grass, which could be used to help widen the space in one's dantian. Even ultimate warriors of heaven tier would be moved by such a chance, so how could it not be rare? I don't know who has supplied these 9 foundation building pills tonight, but that person would definitely be making a killing, the eldest imperial prince said a little enviously. The imperial family was extremely wealthy, but the eldest imperial prince was still envious. It was obvious that he thought these 9 foundation building pills would be able to go for an astronomical amount that would cause even one such as him to lose control. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both turned their beautiful eyes to look at Ling Han. The fellow who would be making a killing tonight was precisely this laid-back, relaxed young man right over here. And the person mentioned did not even look like he was taking this seriously at all. However, the foundation building pills are very close to Earth grade. Even if they were concocted by an Earth grade alchemist, chances for failure are still very high. In my opinion, at least about 20 or 30 furnaces worth of ingredients would explode before successfully concocting these 9 foundation building pills. Going by this, although there is still profit to be earned, it is within reasonable limits, the eldest imperial prince said in a very certain tone, changing the direction of the conversation. He turned around and saw Ling Han and his 2 female companions had rather strange expressions. He could not help but feel surprised, and asked, "What is the matter with you all?" Both Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were trying to hold back their laughter. It was really a tough job. Ling Han was that person who had concocted these 9 foundation building pills. Moreover, he did it in one go. Additionally, one furnace should have only been able to produce 8 pills, but he, with an amazing purification technique of his own, produced 9 pills in the end. The pill completion rate had practically exceeded 100%. Yu, with such a solemn, sure tone, declared that at least 20 or 30 furnaces had to explode before being able to concoct these 9 pills. How could this not cause them to want to laugh uproariously? Of course, these 2 girls were very reserved and still gave face to the eldest imperial prince. Thus, through extreme willpower, they held back their laughter. However, this also caused their expressions to naturally become very strange. Ling Han laughed, and asked, "How much money has your Imperial Highness brought today?" 20 million. What a wealthy man. Ling Han did not mind giving him such praise in the slightest, because this money would very quickly enter into his pocket. Everyone would naturally love someone who would be delivering money to them. "Oh, it's nothing." The eldest imperial prince pretended to be very modest. In fact, this wealth was practically all his savings. After all, he was merely an imperial prince now. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both shook their heads, thinking, "Your Imperial Highness, you're still pretending to be modest, but you don't know that this guy has already started considering all that money of yours as his." Everyone, the 9 foundation building pills will be auctioned off separately throughout the entire auction, so please do not walk away and miss out on it. After the combined appraisal by a few alchemists of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion hired by our pavilion, these 9 foundation building pills are worth 13 stars. All of you should know what a grade of 13 stars implies, right? The auctioneer said with a smile. Clapping his hands, he continued, "And now, to start off the auction, we'll be auctioning off the first foundation building pill to liven up the atmosphere. The base price is 5 million, and every bid cannot be lower than 100,000. After he finished speaking, those rich and imposing people did not look very pleased, while those who were embarrassingly short of money smiled. If these 9 foundation building pills were auctioned off in one go, then there would definitely be very few people able to afford them, so in the end, the price would not be too shocking. However, if they were auctioned off one by one, the competition would become much fiercer, and in extreme conditions, one foundation building pill may go for a price that even exceeded the price of the other 8 pills combined. Thus, those rich people were naturally displeased, as this had added a larger number of bidders they had to compete with for a single pill. 5 million. 5,500,000. 5,700,000. Very quickly, the sound of bids endlessly appeared. That was because it was acknowledged by all that a foundation building pill was worth about 10 million. Thus, everyone was still very enthusiastically bidding, and the price was still very far from the limits they had set in their hearts. The eldest imperial prince also began to place bids. Unfortunately, his status was completely useless in the current scenario. No one would be retreating simply because he was the one bidding. 10 million. Within only 2 minutes, the price of first foundation building pill had reached 10 million. From this moment on, there were obviously fewer bidders, because this was very near to the real value of the foundation building pills. Moreover, there were still 8 left, so they need not compete so desperately yet. After a few more rounds of bidding, the first foundation building pill was finally auctioned off for 13 million. The winning bidder was an old man from the Li clan of the 8 great clans. His cultivation level was at the peak of the spiritual ocean tier, and it was obvious from the delight on his face that he had bought it for his own use. If he was fortunate, when he went into seclusion, he would come out as an elite of spiritual pedestal tier. Spiritual ocean and spiritual pedestal tiers were 2 completely different levels. Your Imperial Highness, if you intend to buy the foundation building pills, it would be best if you act soon. In my opinion, the more things drag on, the higher the price would be, Ling Han said to the eldest imperial prince. The rarer something is, the greater its value. Chapter 186, Swift Cloud Talisman. The auction continued. Following right after were a couple of paintings and calligraphy works, as well as some ornaments. They were not really important for martial artists, but could be used as a way to refresh the mind and a source of amusement. Besides these, there were also some martial arts and cultivation techniques. However, these tended to be too low in grade, and so did not get a very good price. After about half an hour, bidding began for the second foundation building pill. The atmosphere immediately became fired up, and not only did the bid very quickly exceed 10 million, the final price was fixed at 15 million, almost 50% higher than the first pill. The expression on the eldest imperial prince's face turned a bit ugly. If things went on in this manner, then it was really possible that he may not be able to buy even one foundation building pill. He thus secretly made his decision. He would try his absolute best to get the third foundation building pill. When Ling Han saw this, he could not help but shake his head. He believed that, with the accumulated emotions from the earlier 2 rounds of bidding, the third foundation building pill would definitely go for an astronomical price and become a minor climax of this auction. Everyone, the next auction item are these 3 swift cloud talismans. The auctioneer drank a sip of water to moisten his throat and once again began to announce loudly, these are 3 swift cloud talismans. If one attaches onto their body, it will increase their speed by 10 times at most, and the effects would last for about 10 minutes. His eyes swept over the surrounding people. According to the estimation of the appraiser of our pavilion, the higher your cultivation level, the less the speed increase would be. A martial artist in spiritual pedestal tier would be able to increase their speed by only about 2 times, while a martial artist in element gathering tier can increase their speed by 10 times. It has no effect on one in flower blossoming tier. A martial artist in flower blossoming tier could soar to the skies, so it was natural that there would be no effect. And the higher one's cultivation level, the faster one would be, so it was natural that the lesser the speed increase would be. This was understandable. Ling Han could not help but become interested, and sat up straight. This, however, made Hunyo very displeased, because she had to change her position on his lap. Spirit talismans could be taken as a different kind of spirit tool as they were also similarly engraved with the martial intent of a martial artist. However, the material used to sustain the martial intent was a one-use item. Once a talisman was attached to one's body, it would begin working, and this was an irreversible, unstoppable process. Even if you used it for only a short while, its effects would end only once the talisman had been completely expended. However, spirit talismans were far harder to create than normal spirit tools, because unlike spirit tools that needed the user's own origin power to activate them and would not be activated if the user did not have enough origin power, spirit talismans did not have this problem. Once it was attached to your body, its effects would definitely be activated without exception. Of course, some spirit talismans that were too dominating and, with the installation of a terrifying amount of power into the user's body, could actually shatter the user's body, were nothing too rare either. These 3 spirit talismans, he decided he wanted them. Firstly, he could study the martial intent of these spirit talismans, and secondly, they could give him a speed burst of 10 times his usual speed. This, for the current him, was very significant, and may even save his life in the future. For Ling Han, as long as he was alive, he would be able to perform miracles, and would be able to get his own back. The 3 swift cloud talismans will be auctioned off all at once. The base price is 5 million, the auctioneer announced. The base price of 5 million was enough to compare to the base price of a foundation building pill, and it was obvious that in the eyes of the Spirit Treasure Pavilion, they were also an extremely rare, precious item. The reason why they were not left till the end of the auction was most likely because the pavilion feared that everyone would spend all their money on the foundation building pills. 5,100,000. Someone placed a bid, but the increase in price was not very high. In the imperial city, who dared to commit murder? Thus, the price of the swift cloud talismans was far below their estimated price. After all, members of the great clans need not go out and risk their lives and would still be able to get enough resources for cultivation, while those who came from a commoner background would not be able to produce 5 million. 5,200,000. 5,300,000. The bidding went very slowly, and could not be compared to the earlier fiery bidding for the foundation building pill at all. 10 million. Right at this moment, a lazy voice was heard, yet it was practically earth-shattering, causing a numbness to everyone's hearts. What profligate young master was this that he would spend his money in this way? He's really trying to bring ruin to his father. Everyone turned their eyes to the private room on the 3rd floor. Quite a number of people looked surprised, because they had heard the eldest imperial prince's voice earlier on from there. This was still understandable. Who knows, perhaps the Spirit Treasures Pavilion thought that the eldest imperial prince had the highest chances to inherit the throne and so gave him a private room on the 3rd floor. But now, this voice was not familiar at all, so who could it be? Who was it that not only could sit in a private room on the 3rd floor, but could also spare such a shocking amount of money on his first bid? Sun Ziyan's eyes instantly narrowed. He naturally recognized that it was Ling Han's voice. This brat actually had so much money. True, if he did not have so much money, how could he be able to open up so many stores and compete with the Chen clan, even at a loss? There is now a chance for you to save the business of your clan, he said to Chen Yunxiang. The old man considered slightly, then quickly understood, and said, Ziyan, you mean I should compete in bidding with him and force him to spend more money? That's right. The two of you are now competing, and if that brat spends an extra million, that would mean you would earn an extra million, Sun Ziyan said coldly. All right. Chen Yunxiang gritted his teeth. I will go full force ahead today and fight to the end with that bastard. 11 million, he called out loudly. Hiss, the surroundings erupted in a clamor. 11 million was not the highest price today, but to spend so much money for 3 talismans that did not have much use, wasn't that a bit idiotic? Is it that old dog? Ling Han murmured. He naturally recognized Chen Yunxiang's voice. Then let me scare you to death. He raised his voice, and called out, 20 million. Pooh! Everyone choked. This was already not just a spoilt young master bringing ruin to his father, it was practically deranged enough to bring ruin to his ancestors. Not even the 8 great clans could afford to have such a character that would spend money like this, right? Young Master Han, do you really have so much money? The eldest imperial prince asked curiously. Though he knew that Ling Han could have a very powerful background, he did not think that the former could really produce such an exorbitant sum of money as 20 million so easily. That's all right. Doesn't your Imperial Highness have 20 million with you? Ling Han asked jokingly. The eldest imperial prince almost jumped up from his seat. This brat actually had his eye on his money? Though he did want to gain Ling Han's support, but if you were talking about simply giving him such an astronomical sum of money of 20 million, even he would break out in a cold sweat. Moreover, if he spent the 20 million on those 3 pieces of scrap paper, how was he going to bid for his foundation building pill? Young Master Han, don't joke around, he said, rubbing off the cold sweat from his forehead. Ling Han laughed, but did not explain, causing both Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan to cover their mouths and laugh softly. This brat had merely concocted alchemical pills at the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion and had already collected 18 million in the form of observation fees. Moreover, he was the one who had concocted the foundation building pills, and their combined price would definitely total up to over 100 million. 20 million was merely a drop in the ocean. In a private room on the 2nd floor, Sun Ziyan smirked coldly and said, "See, in just a few moments, you have earned 20 million. Raise your bid, continue the bidding." Meanwhile, Chen Yunxiang had erupted into a cold sweat. From that uncaring tone of Ling Han, it was as if 20 million was pocket change to him, but for the Chen clan, although 20 million was not an overwhelmingly large amount of money, they really did not have so much cash. They would have to sell off some of their property to get that amount of cash. If he continued to bid, he was really afraid that his heart would not be able to take the continuous shocks. But when he thought about Ling Han's forceful attitude, Chen Yunxiang gritted his teeth and declared, 21 million. At this, everyone finally understood. He was deliberately raising the bid. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.